Okay, let's see.
Расширить, сделать декстоп. Клон монитора.
So that one is not on either. What?
Обоих. Этот и тот.
Sorry, we only can use one detail.
Oh, I understand. Yeah, but that one's not on either.
Or we can switch between these two.
One slide in back. Yeah, slide.
Sorry, sir.
Oh,
We
sorry.
need to set up monitor clone.
Can you check his?
Yeah, you need to see that.
It was on.
Розетку.
That's why. That's why.
It's working. Because we use wireless mic. Interpreter.
Okay.
Вернуться, я это включу.
Did you unplug that? Yeah. It's fine. It works. Good.
Нет, так все крестьянское.
Да. Слушайте, нужно Сашу попросить включить кондиционер.
Вот.
Не Сашу, а эту Настю. Просите Настю, чтобы она включила кондиционер. Раб, сейчас, секунду.
раз, два, три, четыре. Раз, два, три, четыре. Раз, два, три, раз, два, три, четыре. Раз, два, три, раз,
Роман, может, можно начинать или нет? Okay. Yeah, I think let's start our mini conference. I thank all of you for coming here, and I especially thank our speakers, our well-known scientists from the University of Southern California, who found the time in their very busy schedule and came here to tell us about the advances of what is it working? To tell us about the advances of human brain mapping and different aspects of it. So I'm replacing here Leonid Goldberg apparently because he didn't make it today because he had to leave for an urgent meet. And so I just want to start it right now and give the word to Vladimir Zelman, an anesthesiologist from the University of Southern California, who is, I'm on one of the, I'm on 10 best anesthesiologists in America, and yeah, please. So his talk is about the puzzles and the capabilities of the human cerebrum. Okay, so.
I will go with this one.
Yeah, I think you can talk with this one. Роман.
Говорить только в этот.
Такая, это не слышно, в колонках не слышно.
Только этот для переводчика.
Владимир, can you talk with this microphone?
Во-первых, я где-то одно мое желание выполнил, или, так сказать, исполнил для себя. Я посетил вот сегодня институт или высшую школу экономики. Я давно слышал много, современный, очень интересный, такой, как говорят, продвинутый, такой типа мозгового центра новой России. И особенно мне приятно, что я пришел сюда не один, а с моими коллегами, ведь профессор Тога и профессор Чарльз Лу. Мы в одном университете Южной Калифорнии и хотим с вами, так сказать, поделиться некоторыми данными и то, чем мы занимаемся, и пытаемся также работать с такими учреждениями России. Но прежде чем, так сказать, начать по существу, я хотел бы несколько возвратиться к истории цивилизации и к моменту, когда доказательная наука появилась. Это было в периоде Ренессанса. И тогда, так сказать, наука представляла как конвергенция, где отдельные личности практически обладали знаниями и были, так сказать, с будущим таким предвидением. И они сочетали и математику, и философию, искусство, науку и так дальше. Они были впереди времени, и некоторые из них и свободой, и даже жизнью, так сказать, поплатили за то, что они были впереди времени. Они подготовили, так сказать, всю научную будущую субспециализацию, открыли, так сказать, дорогу к индустриальной революции человечества. И таким образом мы через полтысячелетия живем здесь. Вот где-то красная, так сказать, точка. И снова, так сказать, после дивергенции мы тоже, так сказать, во времени конвергенции, но уже другого типа. И движущими силами прогресса это комбинация технологий, дисциплин и индустрий, и сочетанием всех этих, так сказать, вместе и на, так сказать, стыке и возникают большие прорывы. И мы будем говорить сегодня несколько, так сказать, о прогрессе в изучении мозга. В начале нашего столетия, так сказать, предполагалось, тоже, так сказать, информатики просчитали, что объем фундаментальных знаний удваивается каждые 6 лет. Но есть две проблемы. Во-первых, утилизация знаний составляет всего 10%. Но еще худшая, так сказать, проблема – это только приблизительно 25% профессионалов способны следить за обновлениями своей области, и поэтому мы всегда отстаем, всегда, так сказать, нам кажется, что мы не догоняем, так сказать, первый вагон паровоза, жалуемся, и действительно это проблема. Однако она будет решена именно в этой, я считаю, даже в четверти века, даже не просто, так сказать, в течение этого века. Потому что вот и в этом, в вашем университете есть это новое поколение, так называемые millennials, рождены после 1980 года, кстати говоря, где огромные интересные изменения начались в этой стране. И, в общем, это совсем другая страна, ту, которую я когда-то, так сказать, переехав в Соединенные Штаты Америки. Это первое поколение, которое цифровое поколение. Оно призвано действительно кардинально перестроить экономику, гуманизировать мироустройство. Это поколение оптимистов, оно исключительно мотивированное, уверенное в себе и целеустремленное. И где бы я ни выступал с лекциями, это поколение, которое так похоже друг на друга во всех континентах, во всех странах. Или, так сказать, если даже в одном городе приходишь, два университета, видишь аналогию вот этим энергичным, интересным поколением, которое будет продвигать именно прорывы в науке для, так сказать, нашего здоровья, если мы говорим сегодня о life science, именно быстрее, чем это было, так сказать, вот мое время. И здесь представлено порядком вот мое поколение, и я был свидетелем, так сказать, неких прогрессов, которые привели к сегодняшним достижениям. У меня опыт 58 лет врачевания, из которых 56 я анестезиолог-реаниматолог. Это тоже новая специальность, родившаяся и в мире анестезиологии существует всего 170 лет, а реаниматология является частью ее и частью хирургии. И надо сказать, что Россия в этом направлении была почти одновременно с западным миром. Накапливая опыт и работая, так сказать, в различных даже областях, потому что анестезиолог, реаниматолог, он сегодня не только операционный, так сказать, специалист, а и в других областях это проблемы боли. И у нас много есть теперь подразделений, которые, так сказать, нас призывают работать с другими специальностями. И всегда приоритетом у всех врачей является не только вылечить больного, но чтобы он после или оперативного вмешательства, или любого другого метода лечения сохранил свои личные качества, то есть когнитивные функции, чтобы он снова мог возвратиться в общество, быть полезен или хотя бы себя обслуживать. Первый клинический институт реаниматологии, который и сегодня здесь существует, с лабораторными, так сказать, компонентом, был организован тоже здесь, в Москве, Владимиром Александровичем Неговским. И одной из первых лабораторий было изучение, так сказать, процессов угасания при клинической смерти, как тогда называлось, именно функции мозга, и найти какие-то ключи для того, чтобы сохранить мозг. Я помню, на обходах, так сказать, моих учителей всегда говорили: хорошо, вы оживители, однако вот больной-то не проснулся. И, так сказать, это уже, так сказать, вся наша работа, которая пыталась сохранить жизнь больного без сохранения функций мозга, практически, так сказать, все это уходит на смарку. Мне в жизни где-то повезло, потому что удалось быть свидетелем, даже чуть-чуть активным свидетелем двух самых крупных life science проектов. Это был проект «Геном человека» и первая декада мозга. Оба эти проекта начинались в 1990 году. Очень интересно, никто сегодня может объяснить, почему именно они начинались одновременно. Они не были запланированы одновременно. Однако эти проекты начинались в 1990 году, и Министерство энергетики Соединенных Штатов Америки выделило приблизительно одинаковые деньги – $2,7 миллиарда. Вот здесь два, так сказать, человека, которые были такими, толкали этот проект. Один из Стэнли Ван ден Норт, это первый декан, организовавший медицинской школы в Ирвайне, это всего 1,5 часа от Лос-Анджелеса. А второй это профессор Джозеф Ван дер Мюллен, и вот Александр Николаевич как раз здесь есть. Он сюда приезжал, помнишь, Алексей Николаевич? И он, кстати, очень преклонялся достижениями в неврологии и в нейросайенс здесь, и даже просил меня, мы ездили в Санкт-Петербург, чтобы он увидел институт Ивана Петровича Павлова. И, конечно, Фрэнсис Коллинз и Грейг Вентер, два, так сказать, одного проекта, два автора, две бригады, они, конечно, сделали полную революцию в понятии о геноме человека. Коллинз часто приезжал в UEC, выступал и как-то так с нами делился трудностями, проблемами именно этого проекта. И, кстати говоря, в его, так сказать, группе почти не было так называемых практикующихся врачей. Это были, так сказать, люди basic science, это были нейроинформатики, биоинформатики, физики, химики, генетики и так дальше. И, конечно, компьютерщики, как их тогда назвали, которые могли просчитывать варианты. Это была основа начала первого этапа изучения так человеческого генома. Конечно же, декада мозга и все последующие достижения дали возможность сегодня нам и достижениям физики, химики и так дальше заглянуть глубоко в существо процессов, происходящих в человеческом мозге. И даже мы сегодня, вот мои коллеги смогут рассказывать, как можно даже расшифровывать мысли человека. Однако вернемся к тому, как формируется человеческий мозг, и таким образом он прогрессирует до того, так сказать, как мы с вами можем мыслить, понимать, чувствовать, общаться и так дальше. В последнем триместре беременности и в первые 1,5 года жизни каждую секунду в неокортексе образуется 700 синапсов, то есть коннекты между нейронами. Однако последние 11 недель беременности каждую секунду умирают, так сказать, путем программированной смерти 17 тысяч нейронов. Таким образом, из 200 миллиардов нейронов остается только половина. То есть идет такой специальный отбор, физиологический отбор тех нейронов, которые находят цель своего существования и своей функции. Все остальные уходят. Есть некое мнение, возможно, так сказать, не все из них уходят, так сказать, в небытие, а некоторые из них существуют еще и, возможно, потом могут найти себе применение. Однако, так сказать, все-таки новорожденный имеет порядка между 85 до 100 миллиардов нейронов. Именно во время внутриутробного периода развития плода и происходит, так сказать, формирование всех, так сказать, этапов онтогенеза, развития защитных механизмов мозга. И именно вот эти все трудности и создают программную программу, включая так называемые иммунные процессы, процессы выживания в трудных условиях и так дальше. Таким образом, мозг готовится к трудной жизни будущей реальности. На генетическую регуляцию развивающегося мозга глубокое влияние оказывает особенно этот период раннего развития, как положительно, так и отрицательно. Если использовать некую такую аналогию, ген – это компьютер, а опыт раннего периода жизни, формирования всех этих защитных механизмов – это программа, которая и обеспечивает дальнейшие, так сказать, варианты и программы выживания в трудных условиях. Считалось когда-то, что есть 120 тысяч генов. После, так сказать, уже проекта оказывалось их всего между 20 и 22 тысячами всего. А самое главное, только 2% из них создают программы создания белков. 98% создают программы или регулирует, включая и выключая в различных вариантах развитие, так сказать, белков, развитие клеток и так дальше. Притом в реальной жизни каждый, так сказать, в реальном времени происходит порядка от 2 до 4 миллионов включений и выключений регулирующих генов для того, чтобы создать, так сказать, программу уже человеческого организма, при которой где происходят ошибки. Однако, как биоинформатики, понимают, что это огромное количество информации. И, конечно, ошибки возникают в пространстве, во времени. Это является началом будущих наших бед, наших патологий. И, так сказать, так как мы говорим, когда начал заболевание, мы, врачи, собираем анамнез, нам кажется, что это было вчера. На самом деле, это с момента практически зачатия. Очень интересно, в последнее время появились данные, что большинство мутаций – это результат неизбежных ошибок в процессе репликации ДНК, которые происходят у нас миллионы раз, потому что наши все клетки постоянно в обмене. И каждый раз, когда нормальная клетка делится на последующие две, происходит около 3 мутаций. И так как это происходит миллионы раз, то, конечно, неизбежность, которая есть, еще увеличивается, и поэтому возникает и старость, поэтому, так сказать, есть такая сегодня догма о том, что если ты живешь до 100 лет, обязательно у тебя будет какое-то онкологическое заболевание, но что где-то какая-то клетка прорвется, начнет, так сказать, делиться и так дальше, и возникает, так сказать, нерегулируемая и неконтролируемая ситуация. Однако, все-таки не все в активной, так сказать, части генома подвергаются, так сказать, клонированию и возникновению онкологических заболеваний, неврологических и так дальше. Потому что есть огромное количество, такого же количества, как возможность, еще преувеличивающая возможность защиты, они, так сказать, эти мутирующие клетки погибают, или ДНК репарируется в свою нормальную форму и так дальше. Когда в периоде создания первого, так сказать, попытки генетического атласа человека была идея узнать, какие гены вот в том проекте, о котором я только что говорил, включается и экспрессируется на различных этапах формирования мозга. И таким образом в какой-то степени можно предвидеть возможность тех или иных изменений. И определить, какие гены включаются и выключаются, и как происходит эта регуляция и создание, так сказать, всего, так сказать, мозгового, всего конгломерата. Участниками первой такой попытки были как, значит, ученые USC, UCLA, Института Аллена и Ельского университета. И тогда идея была создать, так сказать, такой атлас из 15 областей человеческого мозга, затрагивающий 13 возрастных ситуаций. В течение этого времени практически на первом даже этапе понадобилось около 1000 уникальных биологических образцов для первого такого варианта атласа. Уже в то время, и это было где-то лет 15 тому назад, были идентифицированы более 300 генетических локусов, связанных с патологическими изменениями головного мозга. То есть уже была заложена возможность предвидеть изменения в той или другой области, которые в итоге выливаются в клиническую там, симптоматику и так дальше, или, как мы определяем, диагноз или заболевание. Следующим таким компонентом это обозначилось распределение транскрипта в мозгу плода. Набор генов, описанный в этой части, будет включать ключевые гены, связанные с развитием мозга. Между прочим, так сказать, внутриутробное развитие плода – это постоянное движение, как я говорил, и поэтому зафиксировать даже самым лучшим прибором функциональной МРИ очень трудно. Однако сегодня уже появились технологии быстрой реакции, и уже можно сегодня увидеть развитие и даже изучать и некие элементы проводящей системы. Снова я повторяю, проблемы со здоровьем не начинаются где-то, так сказать, в нашей взрослой или там в юношеской части жизни. Начинается именно с момента зачатия, если окружающая среда неблагоприятна, эпигенетические факторы неблагоприятны, уже в это время вклиниваются, так сказать, в вопросе создания человеческого организма факторы мутации генов, которые, если накапливается критическая масса, они создают будущие, так сказать, патологические изменения, и этот, так сказать, будущий человек растет или с нарушением мозговой деятельности, или других органов, и, естественно, естественно, или ранняя смерть, или длительное, так сказать, состояние инвалидности, что, конечно, является очень тяжелым бременем как для семьи, так и для общества. Особенно чувствительно к токсическому стрессу это так называемая синаптическая система. И если происходит нарушение именно в этой системе, каждый нейрон имеет 10 тысяч синапсов в связи со своими соседями, дальнейшими, так сказать, своими партнерами. И если количество такой связи уменьшается, естественно, варианты работы мозга меняются, и, так сказать, эти дети или отстают в умственном развитии, или относятся, так сказать, труднее приспособиться к жизни и жить, и трудиться и так дальше. Однако, говоря о таких неких пессимистических, так сказать, вариантах, я должен сказать, и как врач, действительно, с почти 60-летним стажем, что мозг обладает и в клиническом направлении, и, так сказать, изучая и базовые структуры его развития, огромным, многоэшелонированным запасом защиты, выживания, адаптации и выздоровления. Интересно то, что когда возникает некая стрессовая ситуация, так она сама по себе инициирует каскад химических, геном-зависимых, так сказать, реакций, которые уже начинается не только, так сказать, защиты, но даже с регенерацией и восстановлением. И очень интересно, что их система, так сказать, общения, она даже, так сказать, превышает любой сегодняшний вариант, так сказать, информационно-технологическое, так сказать, общения. Каким-то образом, который мы до сих пор не знаем, информация приходит моментально, нейрон, находящийся не только вблизи, даже вдали, начинает запускать этот вариант защиты для того, чтобы встретить, так сказать, неприятности даже на ходу. Если увидите на этом слайде, моментально после порождения уже запускается эндогенная защита мозга. И практически это зеркальное отображение. Но есть одна снова большая проблема. Проблема то, что регенерация, репарация и реабилитация, она очень, так сказать, медленно возникает и медленно прогрессирует. Хотя существуют механизмы стимуляции трофической и других методов для того, чтобы увеличить это. И, естественно, вот мои коллеги будут говорить об информационных возможностях понять это. И также клиническое применение, вот доктор Луи, мы уже делаем это в клинике, так сказать, включая различные варианты репарации мозга. Молодой мозг на ранних стадиях развития очень чувствителен к токсическим воздействиям. Высокая степень ранимости нервной ткани отмечена в период особенно синаптогенеза. Повышенная чувствительность к токсическим воздействиям сохраняется до окончательной дифференциации нейронов и, так сказать, окончания их, так сказать, последние миссии и функции будущего, так сказать, их, так сказать, активности. И у человека этот период охватывает время, начиная с 3-го триместра беременности и до 6-го месяца постнатального развития. Обычно мозг формируется, так сказать, где-то к 10 годам. Иногда это даже и дольше продолжается. А в принципе, если говорить, то, конечно, так сказать, всю жизнь наш мозг, так сказать, себя тренирует, себя восстанавливает. И, так сказать, иногда талант, гениальность иногда проявляется через многие годы после рождения. Стареющий мозг тоже отличается своими особенностями. С возрастом повышается чувствительность мозга к стрессовым ситуациям. С годами накапливаются генетические мутации, которые приводят к дисфункции многих структур мозга. Различные генетические аллели, которые не очевидны в молодости, появляются уже в процессе старения. То есть накапливается критическая масса тех элементов отрицательного влияния окружающей среды, которые и приводят к тому, что возникает, так сказать, деменция, болезнь Альцгеймера, Паркинсон, дальше то так называемые хронические дегенерирующие заболевания центральной нервной системы и периферической нервной системы. Так догма о том, что нейрогенез никогда не происходит во взрослом, так сказать, мозге, сегодня оставлен. Происходит постоянное обновление клеток центральной нервной системы и периферической. Однако, снова это медленно. И очень интересно, что даже нужен стимул такой. Вот сегодня появились интересные работы, что в нейротравматологии, когда каким-то образом мозг поражается внешними силами, именно, так сказать, первый такой удар, он и стимулирует, так сказать, на реакцию гипоксии, ишемии и других таких клинических факторов, выработку новых нейронов, и они направляются именно к месту катастрофы, заменяя старые. Конечно, мы сегодня находимся еще раз в очень интересном времени, понимая глубину функции мозга. Сегодня найдены мозговые так называемые хранилища мыслительных функций. Сегодня на видео даже видно формирование синапса, что, конечно, дает нам возможность в динамике все это наблюдать. Проводящая система мозга, изучение, слово мои коллеги об этом будут говорить, особенно доктор Тога, но цель проекта Коннектома – это создание четырехмерной карты более чем 100 миллиардов нейронов и 100 триллионов их взаимодействий в мозгу. В результате можно будет проследить взаимодействие нейронов, как в мозгу установить число их вариаций и генетическую, так сказать, предопределенность. Это будет как Википедия мозга, в которой результаты визуализации мозга будут объединены в единой карте. Проводящая система – это порядка 160 тысяч километров, так сказать, такой проводки. Это, так сказать, проводка, которая соединяет различные области нашего сознания, участвует во всех аспектах нашего мышления, восприятия и ощущения. Всего около у нас, как я говорил, между 85 и 100 миллиардов нейронов, и каждый имеет 10 тысяч синапсов. Получается 100 триллионов синапсов. Вот это действительно огромная работа, почему сегодня и Big Data – это самое, так сказать, прорывное направление, которое может нам объяснить работу мозга, выбрать варианты, посмотреть, так сказать, как различные из них относятся к той или иной патологии. Одновременно в мозгу работает комбинация порядка 35-40 тысяч комбинаций генов и создается порядка 6 тысяч белков. Индивидуальные генетические структуры играют важную роль в становлении ответных реакций как на болезнь, так и на специфические терапевтические влияния. Именно поиски в эксперименте вот этих вариантов и различных генной инженерии или нейрофармакологии помогут нам, естественно, лечить больных различными патологиями нервной системы. Понимание нейронных цепей может улучшить диагностику болезней мозга и понять их патогенез. Вместо диагностики лечения патологических процессов, как мы говорим, там шизофрения, паркинсонизм и так дальше, мы основываемся сегодня, врачи, практически на симптомах, на, так сказать, технологических изучениях, МРИ и другие, так сказать, высокотехнологические аппараты. Мы сможем с помощью этого идентифицировать специфические повреждения в нейронных цепях, которые лежат в основе заболевания, и применить терапевтические, так сказать, имеется в виду и генная инженерия, и фарма, именно основываясь на данной топографической, так сказать, картине. Это из лаборатории, вот из института как раз доктора Тога, один из его сотрудников, Пол Томпсон, вот этот директор международного такого консорциума «Энигма», вот они, так сказать, мне дали слайд, как себе представляется вот эта проводящая система, многочисленные станции восприятия, аккумуляции, анализа, передачи и в итоге, так сказать, выход в виде какой-то акции, который вот каждый, то, что я делаю, то, что вы слышите и так дальше. Это, конечно, даже здесь то, что показано, это упрощенно по сравнению с тем, как работает человеческий мозг. В общем-то, считается сегодня изучить, так сказать, работу нейрона, это возможно понять, так сказать, работы всей Вселенной. Настолько сложен и наш человеческий мозг. В ближайшие, так сказать, декаду предполагается изучить порядка только 70 тысяч таких пунктов, из которых станет понятным, так сказать, патология порядка 1 тысячи патологических изменений мозга, которые сегодня объединяются в большие группы заболеваний. И они будут, конечно, носить более такой топографически определенный характер. Картирование мозговой активности позволит перевести статическую составляющую коннектома в функциональное отображение и коррелируя электрическую активность с проводящей системе, а также с функциональными и поведенческими проявлениями, поможет расшифровать коды нервной активности, регуляции поведения и психического статуса. Группа ученых, включая из нашего университета Тед Бергер и с партнерами из университета Северной Каролины, впервые смогли записать воспоминания и загрузить их в память мозга животного. Эта программа позволит восстановить память прошлого, то есть какой-то типа пейсмейкера создаться. Это программа, которая сможет помочь одному континенту, как я считаю сегодня, тяжелейших больных. Это болезнь Альцгеймера. И вот снова доктор Тога, доктор Злокович, они вместе работают над этой проблемой. И у нас, так сказать, это 5 миллионов только в Соединенных Штатах, порядка 50 зарегистрированных во всем мире. Это практически тени людей, которые практически уже отсутствуют в реальной жизни. Этот слайд показывает, как обеднела вся система связи между различными регионами мозга. И таким образом, это мозг как таковой практически не существует. И поэтому-то и сегодня очень много сил и энергии именно этому заболеванию. В нашем университете даже создан институт Альцгеймера. Здоровые люди обычно теряют порядка 1% ткани в год. Если набирается критическая масса 10%, заболевания в полном разгаре. И, конечно, тяжелейшие заболевания. Поэтому сегодня нет метода лечения, есть методы диагностики. И вопрос идет, каким образом отодвинуть начало этой патологии или как-то, так сказать, заморозить ее для того, чтобы чтобы продолжительность жизни все-таки есть определенная, чтобы меньше эти люди страдали. И если бы удалось хотя бы на 5 лет отсрочить, количество больных уменьшится на 50%. Конечно, имеется естественный, так сказать, отход этих больных по возрасту, они умирают. Ученые университета из Беркли, это университет Калифорнии, достигли прогресса в распознавании мыслей человека. Человек помещался в МРТ, его мозг сканировали во время просмотра видео. Мощный компьютер анализировал это огромное количество информации и затем воспроизводил примерную копию изначальной картинки. То есть мы можем сегодня таким образом читать мысли. Со временем картирование мозга может иметь такое же значение, как и проект генома человека. То есть практически есть, так сказать, анализ возможных, повторяю еще раз, возможных заболеваний человека, и вместе с тем у нас будет диск, в котором будет показывать возможность предрасположения к тем или другим заболеваниям. И это, в общем, не такое уж далекое будущее, потому что вопрос персонализированной медицины, такой целевой, развивается очень быстро, и в этом заинтересованы все секторы, как, так сказать, мы врачи, так и иншурансные компании, для того, чтобы предвидеть и, так сказать, предотвратить эти заболевания. Возможно, придет время, когда интернет будет заменен брейннетом, через который можно будет посылать эмоции, чувства и мысли. Подобная сеть может изменить все грани нашей жизни, включая образование, индустрию развлечений, а также может убрать барьеры между людьми, поскольку они смогут чувствовать человеческие страдания и жизненный опыт. Кстати говоря, буквально позавчера было объявлено в Силиконовой долине о том, что Марк Цукерберг, его компания уже запланировали Вот так это буквально было 48 часов тому назад, и они над этим проектом активно работают. Вопросы сознания, то есть это вопрос, который, так сказать, до сих пор всех, так сказать, волнует. И вот в 2001 году был в Сан-Диего съезд нейрохирурга. Вот, кстати, и Алексей Николаевич, присутствующий здесь, был тогда, и выступал Фрэнсис Крик. И он сказал о том, что он последние годы занимается вопросами сознания, а его партнер, много сказать, Вотсон, он занимается онкологией. Кстати, так сказать, Вотсон недавно приезжал к нам в университет, а Крик был несколько лет до его смерти, он работал в Колтеке, тоже у него была лаборатория, и бывал на семинарах. Это, конечно, можно сказать, гигант, действительно ученый, коммуникатор и так дальше. И вот на этой конференции он сказал, что невероятна гипотеза о том, кто вы, ваши, так сказать, удовольствия и страдания, ваша память и амбиции, ваше чувство собственного достоинства и свободы волеизъязвления – это не больше, не меньше, как поведение огромного количества нейронов и связанных с ними молекулы. Мы в анестезиологии сегодня, так сказать, это одна из 4 самых крупных, так сказать, контрибуций к здоровью человека, потому что анестезиология и реаниматология вместе с хирургами практически мы покрываем огромный сектор человеческого здоровья. Мы сегодня не имеем теории наркоза, чего и как происходит. Мы только знаем, как действуют некоторые лекарства на некоторые, так сказать, отделы мозга. Очень интересно, что занимаясь вопросами протекции мозга, защиты, в течение только моей карьеры мы испытали более 1500 различных лекарств. Мы тогда даже еще не представляли, насколько мозг сложен, и каждый раз нам казалось, что вот это лекарство создаст возможность выживания мозга в определенных ситуациях. Наверное, сегодня путь идет совсем по, так сказать, другому направлению. Нам необходимо знать генетическую регуляцию и найти пути именно влияния на нее и возможности убыстрения процесса восстановления мозга. В течение, так сказать, миграции человечества порядка от 100 до 40 тысяч лет тому назад 10 тысяч наших предшественных генетических Homo sapiens предков вышли из Африки и расселились по всей планете. Мы 7000-е поколение Homo sapiens. Произошли интереснейшие изменения в геноме человека, приспосабливаясь к различным условиям климата, высоты над уровнем моря и многих факторов. Здесь вы видите все эти, так сказать, многочисленные мутации, приспособления. Никто еще сегодня не изучал, а что произошло за это время с мозгом. И, конечно, если бы удалось провести этот проект изучения снова при сегодняшней технологии эволюции мозга, так сказать, в миграции по планете, конечно, мы бы нашли более тонкие методы лечения, персонализированные в каждом регионе мира. Конечно, восстановление мозга сегодня практически является, так сказать, ежедневным то, чем занимаются и неврологи, нейрохирурги, психологи и так дальше. Я просто приведу пример трансляционной медицины, которую мы, так сказать, уже проводим в условиях сегодняшней, так сказать, реальности. Вот, так сказать, есть многочисленные патологии, вызывающие дезинтеграцию, то есть между головным мозгом, спинным мозгом и всем телом практически нарушается связь, координация, и эти тяжелейшие инвалиды. И вот мы пытаемся каким-то образом в клинических условиях влиять на этот процесс. И это так называемый проект Brain-Computer Interface, когда просчитывается зона в головном мозгу, отвечающая за планирование, намерения, включающиеся с сенсационными, то есть элементами, и теми, которые исполняют это движение. И человеческий мозг может именно через компьютер, обучая его и себя, когда мы вживляем эти электроды и подключаем это обычный, так сказать, наш рабочий операционный день вот с доктором Чарльзом Лу, и бионическая рука может выполнять, так сказать, именно то, что мозг хочет точно так же, как мы, так сказать, в нормальных условиях. И это больной, видите, который управляет через компьютер бионической рукой. И, ну, видите, так сказать, он 24 часа практически находился, так сказать, ему нужна была поддержка. Сегодня этот больной может себя в какой-то степени обслуживать. Это, конечно, огромный шаг, если понять чувство этого человека. Мы сегодня с доктором Капладом и с Чарльзом сидели, обсуждали вопрос, как можно создать проект общения между этими практически изолированными людьми, когда ставятся специальные приборы, и они смогут с помощью мозга не просто так в городе, а межконтинентально общаться и практически создаться какое-то сообщество. Они не будут чувствовать себя совершенно одинокими в этом таком огромном мире. Это, так сказать, часть только наших лабораторий, институтов и так дальше. Но два представителя здесь, это доктор Тога и Чарльз, это два наших, это огромный такой коллектив. И вообще-то университет Южной Калифорнии имеет такое лого, почему и доктор Тога был приглашен к нам, для того, чтобы изучать человеческий мозг. Это несколько проектов, которые мы уже с российскими, так сказать, институтами, это институт Бурденко, детский центр здоровья, институт неврологии и группа институтов Академгородка, с которыми мы, так сказать, сотрудничаем и пытаемся найти общие, так сказать, проблемы. Одним из примеров такого сотрудничества вот из Skoltech Ксения Ершова, она анестезиолог-реаниматолог, кончила резидентуру в Санкт-Петербурге. И вот у нас 9 месяцев проработала, сделала очень интересную работу, правда, не, так сказать, непосредственно, но проблемы внутрибольничной инфекции, сепсиса огромная, смертность очень большая, поиски путей контроля этой инфекции. Дело-то в том, что в эпохе антибиотиков мутация генов у микроба нас настолько опережает, что нам нужно сегодня создавать новые возможности. И это очень интересная тема, которую, так сказать, она у нас сделала. Это наши партнеры Академгородка. Вот, это Александр Николаевич, институт Бурденко. И, наконец, какие у нас вопросы будущего? Почему вообще мутации, ведущие к болезням, присутствуют в человеческой популяции? Какова вообще генетическая основа нашей физиологической адаптации, адаптации нашего сознания? Какова была последовательность демографических событий, которые привели к колонизации земного шара нашими предками, и даже сегодня огромная, так сказать, миграция? И, наконец, в последнее время этот пункт я буквально на днях поставил. Есть ли возможность адаптации, освоения внеземного пространства? Ведь, так сказать, недавно SpaceX, вот, Маск сказал, что он, так сказать, имеет проект, так сказать, уже с обратным возвращением или колонизацией Марса и так дальше. Снова будет огромная нагрузка на наш мозг. Сумеет ли он снова адаптироваться? Сумеем ли мы, как сказал Циолковский, так сказать, вырваться в открытые большие пространства? Ведь нам кажется сегодня, что это, так сказать, невозможно, а ведь наши потомки будут искать эту возможность, потому что, наверное, прогресс, расселение, опасности, да и солнце, наверное, будет светить не вечно, потому что снова кто будет это регулировать? Конечно, human cerebrum, человеческий мозг. И, наконец, я хочу закончить некой философией знаменитого Ричарда Файмана. Вот, микрофилософия в микровремени. И он считал, 2 минуты это 120 секунд или 120 квадриллионов фемтосекунд. 1 фемтосекунда это создание или разрушение молекулы. 60 квадриллионов фемтосекунд равны получению идеи. Что значит быть вовремя? Настоящее в прошлом это наша память, настоящее в настоящем это наше восприятие, настоящее в будущем это наша надежда, прошедшее в настоящем это наши достижения, прошедшее в будущем наши мечты, прошедшее в прошлом наш собственный мозг. Будущее в настоящем это наше сознание, будущее в прошлом это наша совесть, и будущее в будущем это наше культурное наследие. Что же такое следующее будущее? Computer Connected Global Cerebral Community. Объединение всех усилий, так сказать, нашей ментальной активности для того, чтобы не только мир существовал, а чтобы мы жили счастливо и долго и еще были здоровыми. Спасибо. Наверное, пусть выступят партнеры, потом все будем обсуждать.
No, it's not here. Yeah. Oh, it's right here. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Okay, the next speaker is Charles Liu. He's also from the University of Southern California, and he's the professor of clinical neurological surgery and the director of the Neurological Neurorestoration Institute at USC. He will talk about the brain mapping and neurorestoration. So, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'll try to speak slowly because I know there's an active translation going on. I'm very happy to be here at this very important institute in Moscow, and we really look forward to continuing this ongoing dialogue so that we can collaborate to answer some of mankind's very important challenges. I want to share some thoughts that we're trying to develop, and Dr. Zelman's already given you a very good preview of how many of these concepts that affect all of humanity, whether it's at the level of neuroscience to human migration to colonization of space, etc. These concepts are generally relevant to many of the things that we do. And in developing our ideas about restoration of function to the nervous system, we bring together many influences that I personally had over the course of my own education. I want to start off by acknowledging some of these influences, and I want to point out, do we have a pointer? Yeah.
Sorry, forgot.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Just connected.
This gentleman in the middle is my PhD thesis director, and that Dr. Toga and I were just discussing how the use of computers in scientific practice has just escalated tremendously. And I remember having conversations with my PhD thesis director, who was one of the very early engineers to apply engineering concepts to biological systems, that he was the first person to solve a partial differential equation on a digital computer. So I did my PhD with him. What you're seeing here are pieces of the artificial heart, and this was the king of Sweden, and they were talking about how using engineering technology, materials technology, and computational fluid mechanics, they could actually replace one of the two historically significant components of the human body, which is the heart. Of course, now we're interested in doing the same thing for the brain. I also want to acknowledge Professor Konovalov, who's sitting in the second row here. He's a very important person in the world of neurosurgery, and I was very honored to make his friendship early on during my residency training, and I thought that I wanted to show an image that is very important to me, and these are two very good friends of Professor Konovalov and mine as well, and of course Michael Apuzzo, who's a very important person in neurosurgery in terms of developing these concepts that are unusual and applying them to neurosurgery, concepts that very often seemed unrelated, but in the end became extremely important. And of course, Professor Johannes Schramm, who really redefined and rewrote the book on using neurosurgical operations to treat functional disorders of the brain, in particular epilepsy surgery. And he's been tremendously productive and published in all of the journals that we all dream of publishing, the journals that Dr. Toga publishes in all the time, the sciences and natures of our world. Generally, neurosurgeons are interested in these diseases like brain tumors and cerebrovascular, spinal trauma, movement disorders, structural developmental disorders. But I think that if you look at these diseases, and these are again diseases that Dr. Zelman has mentioned, I put them in larger font because, in fact, the economic burden and the threat to our species on this planet for these collective diseases below far exceed those ones that we typically treat as neurosurgeons. we're trying to create the idea of neurorestoration. When I went to medical school, I was taught that the adult nervous system did not get better after it was injured. Not to even try. In fact, all of my work in neurosurgery is predicated upon the idea that we can't hurt anything. We sneak around the brain. Don't touch this, don't hurt that, because we can't make it any better. Over the course of the last several years, we have emerging concepts where the idea that the nervous system, even in the adult, can be repaired. And if we can't repair it, we can potentially replace the function completely artificially, in the same way that we don't fly by growing wings, that we build a plane and we fly with the same concept of powered flight, that it's possible to replace that function entirely. And of course, Dr. Zelman mentioned that we have 100 billion neurons in the brain. We start out with 200 billion, and he describes how we lose 100 billion. And last night, Dr. Zelman and I had a glass of wine, so I killed a few neurons in addition to the ones I would normally lose. But I didn't forget my lecture, right? I didn't wake up any less intelligent, because our brain is massively redundant and massively parallel. So even in the face of loss of certain parts of the brain, are there ways that we can optimize what is remaining so that the functional gap is not even evident? And this convergence, this neurorestoration idea, isn't defined by any one field. Of course, neurosurgery is where I come from, and I suppose I can consider myself a neuroengineer because I did my PhD in engineering before I went to medical school. But if you look at neurology and psychiatry and neurorehabilitation, these are all of the fields in what we consider the clinical neurosciences. Coupled with all of the developments in what we consider the basic sciences, such as neural engineering, computational neuroscience, regenerative medicine. If you put all of these things together and you address functional loss and the restoration of neurological function as the primary goal of treatment, remember, as doctors of the nervous system, we treat ischemia, we treat inflammation, we treat infection, we treat all of these things, but in the end our patients care that they can't move their arms and they can't think and they can't see. The addressing of the neurological function as the ultimate goal of treatment from the clinical neurosciences perspective is in fact what governs our work. Let me just spend a few minutes and just make some comments about the repair concept, because I remember as a medical student at Yale University in 1992, my roommate had just finished a law degree at Yale University, and he was in medical school. In America, we have a very flexible system where people move from engineering to medicine and law to medicine and so on and so forth. It's actually one of the strengths of our system. But he was talking to me about the legal and ethical and moral implications of fetal tissue transplantation for the treatment of movement disorders. The early work by the pioneers in Lund, Sweden, transplanting fetal tissue into the brain of Parkinson's patients was probably the first human clinical application of this concept we now understand to be the regenerative medicine and stem cell concept. Now, 1992 to now, it's been a long time. And we're finally, this last year, in 2016, if anybody likes to Google things, or we always like to look in Google and see what people are thinking and trending, and there are a lot of commentators, scientific commentators, that talk about what's important and what's happened that's transformed things. And one of the things that have been identified, of course this is not just our work, but the work collectively in the field of regenerative medicine for neural repair of both the brain in stroke and the spinal cord in spinal cord injury, has escalated last year in 2016 probably more than it's ever escalated. And of course this is our patient, sort of a famous photograph now, and he's a young man who had a complete spinal cord injury that couldn't move his arms and hands. and is one of a small cohort of patients that have received oligodendrocyte precursor cells, a very specific type of stem cell, quote-unquote stem cell. Talked about repair. What about replace? We don't grow wings to fly. We build a plane that takes advantage of powered flight and lift, right? So if the brain is damaged or the nervous system is damaged to the extent that repair is not possible, is it possible for us to think about replacing it? And what does brain-computer interface technology essentially entail? The information is encoded in different parts of the brain, and Dr. Toga has shown us marvelous pictures of where this information may lie. But if we're able to extract that information and use computational approaches to understand what information is actually extracted, and then to develop a control signal to either control the body, which is disconnected, or an external device, then these constitute the components of the field of neuroprosthetics, which is replacement parts of the brain. So think about that original historical picture with my PhD advisor with artificial hearts, right? Now we're developing these replacement parts for the brain. And of course, the optimization strategy. And we were just, Dr. Toga and I over coffee, were talking about the idea of one of his children doing rehabilitation, how mathematics and these computational concepts have now very much infiltrated the neurorehabilitation idea. And I will tell you that, in all fairness and out of respect for all of our colleagues working in rehabilitation, long before I even thought of the idea of restoring function, they were already working on it, except that they were doing it in ways that we believe we can contribute to using some of these more advanced approaches. But the idea of computational non-invasive neuromodulation, whereby the electromagnetic properties of the brain are leveraged using non-invasive strategies like transcranial magnetic stimulation and direct cortical stimulation, coupled with advanced training paradigms developed in our neurorehabilitation realm, can ultimately lead to very significant advances in the ability of our patients to restore their function. So, using a combination of repair, replace, and optimize, we believe that it may be possible, at least theoretically, to imagine where neurological disability and dysfunction, this medical problem, can be turned into an engineering problem and solved the same way we've solved many of our other problems that humanity has faced, whether it's transportation or clean water or hunger or cities, or communication. Now, I wanted to tie this discussion in with brain mapping. And Dr. Toga is going to give us a wonderful talk about brain mapping. And mapping is so important. If you think about all of the things that human beings have done, why do we need a map? When I come to Moscow, the first thing I do is I take this thing and I go, okay, where am I? And what information do I need in order to do what I want to do? So the map is of critical importance in terms of directing our attention to those specific areas that require more detailed analysis. So I think Dr. Khaitovitch would agree that structural imaging of the human nervous system has probably contributed more to our ability to operate on the structure of the brain safely than just about anything. The new imaging techniques, and Dr. Toga will share those with you, of structure and now the associated function, but has taken our ability to map the brain, to be able to look. Remember, a map, all it does is it points you to that right direction for you to explore more, right? So this has been taken to a completely new level with functional connectivity and the temporal sequence being somewhat challenging with MRI, but metaphors for that temporal sequence being made available so that we can at least have a sense of what those time sequences are. But I think that all of us would agree that in the human brain, irrespective of what genetic, transcriptomic, biological basis of the function is, that the information is in fact encoded and transmitted in the form of electromagnetic oscillations of populations of neurons within the brain in a temporal spatial pattern. Most of the brain mapping associated with brain-computer interfaces are in fact trying to understand all of these areas of the brain where this information is in fact encoded and recording those directly in behaving patients, because the specific context in which these oscillations change and occur are in fact very specific depending on the action, the specific action that we perform. This is, of course, a image of the Brain-Computer Interfaces Laboratory at Rancho Los Amigos, where we do much of our work, and this is my great friend and dear colleague, Richard Anderson, and the team, and I think Dr. Zelman has shown pictures of Eric Sorta already, and here's Eric basically performing tasks with therapists and postdocs, and us directly recording those areas of his brain where he has implanted electrodes so that we can decode it. Now, has anybody seen Google Earth and played with it? There was a really great movie called Lion that was just a guy was able to, an Indian boy got lost, and he ended up in Australia, and he was looking for his mother, of course. What a wonderful thing to do, right? And he ultimately found her by using Google Earth, because some of the early memories of what he recalled, he could actually get those level of detail by zooming in and zooming in and zooming in and zooming in on Google Earth, right? So if you look at the human brain and our ability to directly record, similar concepts, right? You know, we get one level of information by recording over a large area, and of course this is a three-dimensional surface rendering of a brain of one of our patients that had been implanted with these electrodes. This, of course, this light blue area is the primary motor area, and this orange area is the primary sensory cortex S1. And the yellow area is a large grid of electrodes that we place over the brain for epilepsy monitoring. The smaller area, this in purple, it represents a mini grid. It is a much higher density array of electrodes that still records the averaged field potential generated by millions of neurons, right, but at higher density. And of course, this little square, which is 4 millimeters by 4 millimeters with 96 microwires, are designed to actually penetrate the brain and record from individual neurons of a very specific area within a region of the brain. The level of information that you get from every one of these areas of resolution, let's not forget EEG, because what EEG does is it allows us to record over the entire brain, at least the orthogonal projections, as Alex will tell you, right? That's not so simple because of the convolutions in the brain, but at least it gives you a sense of what the orthogonal projections of the field potential are, right? So from the whole brain down to a relatively large area, to a slightly smaller area, to a very, very small area. And what's wonderful is that we do in fact have all of these physical interfaces that we can implant into the brain to be able to record at every one of these levels of resolution. And I'll tell you what's even better is that these are implanted in the context of our clinical practice now with, you know, all of these different neuroprosthetic devices to treat movement disorders that allows us to record from the deeper structures of the brain to the epilepsy electrodes that we implant for looking at epilepsy. And every one of these, and these are these micro, macro depth electrodes that allows us to actually record from very deep nuclear structures in the brainstem. So I want to spend just quickly the next 10 minutes and go over examples of how the recordings in behaving patients at every one of these levels of resolution, from the single cell level of resolution to the mini grid resolution to the macro resolution, superficial and deep, as well as in the whole brain in overall context in EEG, are being leveraged for these types of restorative replacement strategies. So these are, of course, slides that some of you may have seen, and these are this represents the work that Dr. Zelman showed with Eric Sorto taking a drink of beer with just his thoughts. Now, Eric has, I'm trying to communicate this concept. So, for example, if I come to Moscow and I look at the whole city in general, I get a sense, right? If I want to know what's happening in the subways, I have to go to the subway station, right, and take a look in the subway station. But if I want to know specific details, I may find a very knowledgeable person who is working in the subway and ask that person, hey, what's happening with these trains? Okay, so the information that you get from that knowledgeable person, but not just one knowledgeable person, right, because he gives you one set of information. If you can find 30 knowledgeable people within this one area, you may be able to get all different facets of this information that you can then put together to give you a very, very good picture of what's going on, right? And so the human brain, the way it works, is in a highly integrated fashion. Dr. Toga will show you pictures of how all these different parts of the brain are in fact connected. What that means is that when we perform a certain action, everything from the goals and intentions and the planning of that goal, of the actual task, to the execution and trajectory calculations of that task, can be found at all of these different levels of resolution, as well as in different neurons that are in different parts of the brain. For example, in the parietal cortex, which is where Dr. Anderson's been working for 30 years, the goals and intentions of certain actions are found. And so the idea is to implant these intracortical electrodes. Most people, as you know, have been implanting these in the motor cortex, but the motor cortex does not encode for goals. There's no goal in the motor cortex. There's no planning in the motor cortex. That's in the premotor area. The goals are in the posterior cortex. So if we can actually get the information from the posterior cortex, in fact, this represents a whole different level of decoding. And the idea is to, and there are some, of course, advantages in the parietal cortex versus the motor cortex. And, you know, our posterior parietal cortex encodes bilaterally, right? It doesn't. It's not like one side encodes for the right arm and the left side. You know, it's really one coordinated. It's much more of an integrative, higher level cortical area. And this shows us how the world that Dr. Toga works in and the world that we work in really connect, because we are really taking advantage of these fMRI strategies that our imaging people have developed to allow us to get to an area, to even know what to target in terms of our implantation. Of course, this is what the black rock array looks like. This is 4 millimeters by 4 millimeters, very, very small. And Dr. Zelman already showed you the picture of what this looks like, and this has been implanted. And this is an array of all the neurons firing recorded by each one of those microwires. And I'll tell you what's really cool is not just on-off, it's that all these individual channels have different features. So one neuron, when you're performing one task, fires in a certain way. But if you perform another task, that same neuron could fire in a different way. And these features are, in fact, allows you to have a combinatorial picture of the very, very large array of activities through recording from only a few neurons. And so the idea is to have the patient perform, and as they're behaving the task, we're recording and decoding, playing rock, paper, scissors with our patients, right? I mean, this is real-time, you know, rock, paper, scissors, and we've increased the task because rock, paper, scissors is only a choice of 3, so We've added Lizard and Spock to make the game a little bit more fun for our patients, right? So this is what I just showed you is recording single neurons. Okay, so Dr. Zelman also mentioned the work of Dr. Berger, and Ted is also a very close friend of mine and a very close collaborator. And Ted is probably the first person to talk about using these same ideas, because even when you look at Dr. Anderson's work, it's about motor control, right? Even though we're recording higher level cognitive information, it's about being able to control an external device. What Ted has been talking about for years is the idea that these same record, compute, predict, control signal approaches can be used to restore memory. All right, so how does this concept work? So we know that in the human hippocampus, I don't know what scientific background everybody has, but the hippocampus is the paleo structure in the temporal lobe of the brain where short-term memory becomes long-term memory by the transformation of temporal spatial spikes from one region of the hippocampus to the next. And so basically, this is an illustration of what that process looks like. And this is, of course, the hippocampus. Now, if there is damage in one of the points of connectivity between one area, neuronal population, versus another neuronal population that's important, that would be like if you had an electronic circuit where you've essentially damaged one part of the circuit, and this temporal spatial spike pattern no longer transforms into the correct temporal spatial spike patterns. And this is illustrated in this idea here. So short-term memory then no longer becomes long-term memory. So what is Dr. Zelman mentioned we have to think clinically, because in the end it has to matter to our patients, right? So what patients will suffer from something like this? Okay, so epilepsy patients, we know, have populations of neurons that die in different areas of the hippocampus. If somebody suffers global ischemia, general ischemia, global ischemia, neurons in the CA1 region die in massive quantities. And if so, these regions are responsible for memory being formed, then it follows that their ability to, with due consideration given to the redundancy of the brain, but when you get to a certain point, you may lose that ability. So if we are able to record proximal to the damage and compute and apply a stimulation signal back to the part of the functionally connected area, then you could essentially bypass it. And so this, of course, involves very complicated mathematical modeling using multi-input and multi-output modeling. And you can see that the recorded CA1 spatial temporal patterns compared to the predicted CA1 spatial temporal patterns correlate quite well. So what does this look like in patients? And so, of course, this is Brian Lee, who's one of our brilliant young doctors, implanting a patient with these macro electrodes. Now, this is a patient suffering from temporal lobe epilepsy. The beauty of this is this patient is actually getting these electrodes implanted as part of his medical care. We're not doing anything to this patient that we wouldn't otherwise do in terms of identifying where the seizures are located. So these are the macro electrodes, and of course, what's interesting is that in these macro contacts, we're trying to find the seizures. There are micro wires that come out that allows us to record specifically from different areas of the hippocampus, at least in theory, right? So the next example, so here we've again shown a bidirectional brain-machine interface looking at recording from the single neuron level, okay? But let's take a step backwards in resolution, and let's take a look at the averaged field potential generated by millions of neurons, okay? So we chose walking, right? Walking is sort of a very important thing, and we think that, in fact, it may be interesting to think about this because the way we control walking and the way we're able to recreate walking takes advantage of how gait and walking is actually physiologically created. We walk, when I walk, the gait, right, the stepping is actually generated by my spinal cord. There's a central pattern generated in the spinal cord that generates this gait. So what my brain does is it controls if I start or stop, right, and how fast I walk. And that's the level of brain control. So can we decode that level of brain control and use it to control a robot exoskeleton? And I think Dr. Zelman showed you a schematic of that. But this is active projects are funded and ongoing at Rancho Los Amigos where we do our rehabilitation work. And here again, you've got a patient who has these electrodes implanted in her brain. She's, again, behaving, walking on a treadmill. And as she's recording, as she's walking, we're able to record her brain activity at the level of electrocorticography. And the idea is to create a fully implantable, bidirectional brain-computer interface system that records the neural activity at the level of electrocorticography. And here I just wanted to show you. I guess this is the reason I took all my videos out. But you can already see that this is real-time decoding of the oscillations that are going on in the interhemispheric fissure in the primary motor areas. So we also know that when you have complex behaviors, for example, if I have a company, like here, right? I'm speaking to you guys. This is a synaptic connection, okay? The school operates in a very complicated way that goes beyond my ability to speak to individual people, right? We have things called culture, right? In corporations called corporate culture that governs the behavior of individual people without the CEO having to speak to them individually, right? So this idea is called ephaptic coupling, right? Each individual worker is connected to the CEO of the company, not by direct synapse, maybe a little bit, right? But a lot by ephaptic, right? And so the idea of swarm intelligence, the collective, integrated behavior of lots of individual units that are quite similar, is starting to be evident in all of the artificial intelligence programming that you guys see, right? So this is where, if you want to look at the integrated function of the entire brain, you have to look at the level of EEG now, right? Because if I just look at one area of one hemisphere of the brain, it does not give me the robust information that goes across the entire neural structure, right? And so when we look at EEG, this is a recording of a person. And you see these little, typical squiggles, right? But in the same way, our astrophysicists don't look at the sky and say, oh, I see that supernova. We analyze the electromagnetic radiation mathematically, right? We can use mathematics to. This is a very simple transformation. This is called the Fourier transformation. When you take information from the time domain, you turn it into the frequency domain, and this person actually has remarkably coherent brain. This is the alpha peak across all of the 16 contacts in his brain. And if you looking at the other basic signal processing concepts, looking at delta, theta, alpha, beta, power of the oscillations, and compare it. This is where I think the world that Dr. Toga works in, which is the idea that collecting large amounts of information and looking at the Gaussian distribution of this information, because, what is normal? Normal is, in fact, what inside of one standard deviation of a large data set, right? Abnormal is something that's 2 or 3 standard deviations away from the mean of a large data set. So taking those same concepts, and if you get a database of age and gender matched normals, you can take a person's EEG and compare it to that database and get an information about the parietal area does not appear to be functioning in the same way. That the alpha peak is higher or lower, or that there's a lot of beta activity or a lot of gamma activity, right? And so this is called the S-Loretta, low resolution S. Loretta, and here you see that this particular person has more than 1.5 standard deviations higher in terms of the alpha peak, and more than 2 standard deviations lower of these confusing beta and delta peaks, right? And I've been told that this means that this person is pretty capable of processing complex information. And I would say, this is actually our analysis of my own brain. So these ideas of ephaptic versus synaptic is not just wild theories, right? I mean, credible scientists, Yuri Bushaki, who's at the Brain Research Laboratory at NYU, and Christoph Koch, who's up at the Allen Institute, you guys are writing editorials about how these rhythmic oscillations are, in fact, where the information is encoded and transmitted across large distances. And it's the temporal spatial sequence of all of this that encodes for all of our function. Which means that if we have non-invasive ways to alter the electromagnetic field potential around different parts of the brain. You've heard of transcranial magnetic stimulation, right? I guarantee you, I can take a TMS wand and I can render every one of us in the room blind by just stimulating the occipital cortex. I can depolarize it. I can paralyze my arm by stimulating my right arm by stimulating the left motor cortex above the motor threshold, right? So if I can, we all know, right, in neurosurgery, if you can see a negative effect, you can probably see a positive effect. So it all comes down to understanding how to manipulate these electromagnetic potentials to restore function. So, what is then our dream? Our dream is real time, right? Because that's what the brain does. Simultaneous bidirectional, meaning we don't get to, our brain doesn't work by extracting information, going onto a computer, right? Working a week later with a data set it decodes and coming back. That's not what our brain does. It does simultaneously bidirectional. The information coming from externally applied to the brain is taken into consideration and processed as part of the ongoing process of information processing. It's got to be multi-scale. We talked about single cells. We talked about local field potentials. We talked about EEG. In the same way that Google Maps gives us different information depending on which level of resolution we take, we have got to be able to process all of this information in an integrated way, in a multi-scale fashion, to achieve brain-computer. This is cool, right? Brains, meaning S, right? And brain-computer-brain, whereby I would love to plug my brain into Dr. Toga's large servers and have ongoing utilization of these AI capabilities. Remember, I make decisions based upon the information that I'm getting. We all know that if I get good information and processed information in which we can make a decision, right, then I can make an accurate decision and a good decision very, very quickly. Our brain takes all of this information, processes it based upon our memories, our past experience, our predictions of what's going on, and we create a single percept on which we make a decision, right? Can we augment our brain's ability to make the right decision at that moment by using this concept of brain-computer-brain interfaces? So I want to leave this on a kind of a cool note, right? I come from Los Angeles, and so we get to, be a little Hollywood, right? Okay. So remember, we talked about neurorestoration, right? Of course, you take neurorestoration, think about augmentation, etc., right? But does anybody know how fast Tony Stark can run? No, right? Tony Stark is an example, the Iron Man is an example of the embodiment of all of those concepts. Remember, Jarvis, his computer, right? The suit, he's neurally integrated. He doesn't fly the suit with controllers, right? He is the suit is him, and it becomes part of him. That Iron Man suit is a neuroprosthetic device. And of course, I want to acknowledge all the people that we work together to get any of this stuff done, and I'm actually running out of time, but I want to end with this picture, and of course, I had the pleasure of walking around central Moscow with Professor Zelman, and I'm just so impressed with how significant this city is, and all of the corners that you look at. You guys don't do anything a little bit, right? Everything you do is grand. There's no fear. You just go do it, right? So I really look forward to working with all of you in the future to develop some of these concepts that ultimately I think are very general in terms of all of humanity's endeavors, but with our own work in this little area of neurosciences, trying to understand these concepts a little bit better. Thank you.
So let's phone the questions to...
Давай микрофон возьму, чтобы переводить.
This one, yep, I see, okay, let's just...
Виталий Верхлютов из Института высшей нейроблизости Российской академии наук.
Подождите. Charles, I'm sorry. Could you please wear the translator? And because Vitaly wants to ask you a question, please.
Yeah.
Виталий Верхлютов из Института высшей нейроблизости Российской академии наук. Вы показывали...
Take your time,
Вы показывали два
because I spoke to Dr. Zelman, so it's okay.
электрода, которые вы накладываете на поверхность мозга.
The schedule, basically. It's okay. Just take your time, as much as you need. To wherever makes sense. Thank you.
Да, вот здесь.
Okay.
Просто переведи в последовательность.
Just
Алло. Слышите? Давайте
Why don't you...
I'll translate.
Вы показывали два вида электродов, которые накладываете на поверхность коры.
You showed two types of electrodes,
Это макроскопические массивы из электродов, большие, и маленькие матрицы. Когда вы смотрите активность на маленьких матрицах,
when you look at the, you mean super small matrices,
Да.
right? When you follow the, when you explore the activity, using the super small grid, 4x4 millimeter grid.
вы можете видеть, я видел ваши работы, ваших коллег, такие эффекты, как движущиеся волны, traveling waves.
You can see traveling waves using those 4x4 millimeter chips. You
don't see the area is very small, right? And so it may, this area is very small. So it may be that in this, at this scale, a lot of the information transfer is in fact synaptic, right? Because,
Go ahead.
yeah. And so when you get to larger distances, right, then it may be more ephaptic. And the local, think about a football stadium.
Okay.
Right? You've got a football stadium. You're looking
Можно
at
дальше? Я продолжу.
Yeah.
Вы видите большую, видите на большой матрице, что большая матрица и маленькая матрица, активность там не совпадает.
If you compare the activities that you see using the big matrix and the small matrix, and the these activities do not match.
No,
right?
just think about, again, the analogy.
Еще, да, продолжу. До конца.
Just, sorry, can you finish the question and then you'll talk?
Yes.
So then it will be much simpler. Okay.
До конца. Вопрос следующий. Вы учитываете объемные эффекты тока, которые могут быть на больших матрицах из-за движения вот этих волн?
Are you taking into account volume conduction effects when you're comparing the activity of these two matrices, right? Are you taking into account not only the synaptic transmission of another kind of neuronal transmission, but the volume conduction effects?
That's a great question, right? Because it is, in fact, when you have a single neuron fire, it probably isn't enough to generate a large field potential to conduct, right? So it may be that one neuron will directly synapse and activate with local neurons in the area. But if you start talking about larger areas where millions of neurons are firing in concert, then the volume conduction concept is exactly what we mean with ephaptic transmission.
Они мяч не видят его на маленькой матрице.
So he's asking, insistent on, do you see waves on a small matrix? No, right?
You do. You see versions of waves, right? For example, you see different neurons that are synchronized to each other, right? So that is a wave, right? Neuron fire here, fire here, fire here. That's a wave on a much smaller, high resolution scale, right? If you're talking about large field potentials, each individual neuron doesn't generate a large potential to propagate in the volume conduction way that so yes, so the idea is that, so the answer is yes.
But those waves are different waves, right?
Different,
Basically.
completely different.
Different scale and
different scale, different waves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry. The next speaker is Arthur Toga. He has many affiliations, right? So I'll just say that you are the director of the USC Institute for Neuroimaging and Neuroinformatics, right? I think this affiliation matches the topic of your talk most, right?
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. So Arthur, welcome and yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming.
Well, again, thank you for the invitation to be here. It's my second time in Moscow. It's always fun to be here. This is an unusual place for me to speak. I've never spoken at a school for economics before, but I understand you do more than economics. So, and I think, as you've heard from the previous two speakers, the distinction between studying the brain and mathematics is going away. That I don't think we can understand something as complicated as the human brain without the application of computational strategies. The data that we acquire are diverse. The data that we acquire is complicated. And the relationships between the observations that we can make need to be established using computational strategies. So let me spend my 25 minutes, or 20 minutes or so, telling you a little bit about what we do and why we do it, and leave you with the challenges that we still face in terms of trying to understand brain in all of its complexity. So making a measurement of the human brain is typically done at one area of the spatial continuum. In my area, we may focus primarily on brain regions or even microcircuits. We rarely get down to the proteomic level, although it's not uncommon to measure proteomic changes in a certain region relative to the observations in a larger area of brain. So this is how the brain works. It goes from the proteomic level all the way up to behavior, all the way up to the whole body. But we typically focus on only one area because the instrumentation that we have to make these measurements narrows our ability to look at a specific region. This is in the spatial continuum. And it goes literally from the nanometer range all the way up to the whole meter range. And the very same continuum holds in function, time. So if we look at behavior, my ability to have this conversation with you, or my change as my lifespan alters my brain from decades, years and decades and so forth, all the way down to the molecular dynamics, which are allowing you to remember some of what I say, really goes from picoseconds all the way up to decades. And our ability to observe along this temporal continuum is also quite limited. That the instrumentation from the electrodes that Dr. Liu just showed you is in the millisecond time frame. Again, milliseconds. We look in brain imaging at seconds because we don't have the ability to acquire the images fast enough. And so all of the techniques that we use are limited in time and space. And the computational strategies that we need to develop today, and have done some of, require us to be able to aggregate those observations and put together the measurement that we made at milliseconds with the behavioral consequence that we watch over seconds or minutes or hours in the process of learning, or even years. And so I just kind of wanted to set the stage with this, because I think this is important to understand how primitive we really still are. That we really don't have the ability to look across this continuum at any single time, or the space continuum. And that it's incumbent upon us to develop databases, tools, and models to put together all of these different types of observations. And some of that has been done today. And just again to capitalize on a good point that Dr. Liu made, and that's an atlas or a map. And he said when he comes to Moscow, he looks at his phone to find out where he is and where he's going. I would add to that the coordinate system, the XY coordinate system that relates to the places in Moscow, can have additional information layered upon it. You could look at weather. You could look at traffic patterns. You could look at the location of a gas station or a restaurant. All of that information is available to you on your cell phone. But it started out with just a coordinate system and the names of places. And the same is true in the human brain. We start out with structure. What is the place relative to a coordinate system? And upon that, I can layer other information, whether it be the electrophysiologic measurements, whether it be hemodynamics, whether it be gene expression patterns. All of these things can be layered using the coordinate system as the reference to relate the observations across temporal and spatial scales. Okay, so let's look at some images. People are not imaging people in this audience, right? Anybody do imaging? 1, 2, 3, few. Okay, so one quick lesson, one slide. We have lots of ways to image the brain in vivo. Some post-mortem also. We can apply a radio tracer to a variety of molecules that requires the injection of radioactivity, or sometimes breathing it, in order to characterize different distribution of molecules and their dynamic change in brain. These are images that I've used to study Alzheimer's disease. And we're interested in Alzheimer's disease for many of the reasons that Professor Zelman described to you. Using PET, positron emission tomography, we can look at misfolded proteins accumulating in the brain, called beta amyloid. There are many proteins that accumulate in the brain. Beta amyloid is one of them. When there are too many, they kill the cells. They kill the cells preferentially in the temporal lobe, right here. And that's the result, that produces the result of cognitive decline associated with Alzheimer's disease. Why the hippocampus and the temporal lobe and other limbic structures are susceptible to the disease is one of the incompletely understood questions today. We can also use MRI. And MRI, you've seen pictures of these in the newspaper, you see them all the time. Probably many of you have had scans where we look at anatomical changes that occur as the result of a disease process, or just some traumatic insult, or just normal brain. And we could look at changes relative to a normal distribution. These are brains of Alzheimer's disease on the right column. And the hotter colors, the redder colors, show loss of tissue. Note that it's exactly in the same place where amyloid shows up. Amyloid goes to these regions, kills the cells, tissue is lost. It's a simple relationship. These two types of images, one using radioactive tracers, one just MRI, show you the consequences of one to the other. We can also use MRI, same scanner, different program, to compute other types of signals. This is fractional anisotropy, which basically refers to the preferential diffusion of water molecules along an axon versus across it. We can calculate that and use that information to actually compute a map of connectivity, the wiring diagram of the brain, and as you might imagine, many diseases produce connectopathies, regions of the brain that are misconnected or lose connections as a result of the process of the disease. We can also exercise those connections using resting state fMRI, which is a functional measure. It looks at regions of the brain that are temporally connected, just in time. And we make the assumption that if two parts of the brain are active at the same time, they may be communicating. That's the basis of resting state fMRI. You can believe it or not, I think you should question it, because it's a tenuous connection. Nevertheless, these are some examples of how we can collect information about brain structure and function. I'm going to spend about 10 minutes of my time talking about perhaps the latest development in MRI and imaging, which has to do with the connectome. In fact, Dr. Zelman showed you an image, which comes from this project, and they're extraordinary images. They're extraordinary because up until about 10 years ago, we had no way of in vivo making a measurement of what part of the brain was connected to what other part. You couldn't do it. You could only do it post-mortem. You take the tissue out, you can do histology and make the connections, or you use animal models. But that was the only way of getting these wiring diagrams. Now we can do it with MR. And so I think the other take-home lesson is what we can do today is only part of what we'll be able to do tomorrow. And I think, Dr. Liu's talk was future-looking. What are we going to be able to do next year and 5 years and 10 years? But today, we have the ability now to create these maps of connectivity. And these maps of connectivity do not show you neurons. They do not. It's like flying over in an airplane. It's a 39,000-foot view. These are bundles of fibers. That's all we can see. Although they look like individual fibers, they are not. They are fascicles and bundles with relatively poor spatial resolution because the imaging technology does not give us a better view. That's all we have. Nevertheless, I think it's a lot because up until now we couldn't see any of this, and it's getting better. So this is an image. What I just showed you in the previous one was an image at 3 Tesla. So MRI field strengths give us an advantage in terms of collecting information. This is at 7 Tesla. So it's a higher field magnet. These are human magnets. It's not used clinically. In the United States, it must be approved for clinical use by a regulatory agency called the FDA. This device is not approved for clinical utility. It's still an investigative device. But when one looks at this image of connectivity, you can immediately appreciate the improved resolution in terms of what we can see in terms of wiring diagram. We can see cortical connections here, which you cannot easily see at lower field. And so there are advantages as the technology gets better, and it will continue to get so. And even at 7T, if I zoom down into a particular region of the brain, I can see the enormous heterogeneity, the complexity of these connections in vivo in a living individual. This is important data because it tells us not only that brain structure is quite different across people, but the wiring diagram across people is different. So that gives me enormous value in trying to understand why one group, maybe right-handers relative to left-handers, or men versus women, or Alzheimer's disease patients versus aged matched controls. Having this fidelity is important for us to make these population distinctions. And let me just show you what this is relative to big data, because that's really what this sort of session is about, and that is how do big data challenges apply to these types of data. So look at these numbers. These are real-world data sets that we collected. In diffusion imaging, we collect somewhere on the order of 3 million voxels. Okay? From each of these voxels, the diffusion of water molecules can be measured at upwards to 288 different directions per voxel. I do the multiplication here, and I get somewhere over 8 billion original measurements. 1 billion, one brain. 1 billion. That's just the measurements. From there, I must make a variety of calculations in order to produce these type of images. This is on a single brain. So I have 1 billion points, which are processed with about 1 trillion computations into these kinds of images. And again, I want to make clear, these wires here are not single neurons. They are groups of neurons. So as the resolution goes up, and our ability to get higher fidelity data, whether it's by field strength or other mechanisms, these computational demands will also go up. And so we generate massive amounts of data, massive requirements for computation for single patients. And ultimately the goal is populations. So here's a look at some of these things. From these points and these calculations, I can track upwards to about 1 million tracks simultaneously. Fibers that are coursing throughout, producing somewhere around 2,200 average points per track, and again, about 2 billion plotted points. This is hot off the press. This is not even quite published yet, but I think these kinds of results give us a great deal of hope that being able to look at minute changes that are associated with a disease process or to distinguish one group from another. From these sort of macro views, just as I showed you with a single image, we can compute very small regions of fibers that give us a view into minute projections or regions of the brain that are wired differently than other regions of the brain. And I would suggest to you that these maps, these connectivity maps, are dynamic, that they change over time. They change as a result of experience. They change as a result of your age. They change as a result of disease processes. So creating a map of the human brain has to accommodate the fourth dimension, time. That these three-dimensional maps that have other information layered upon them are changing. And each and every one of us has a different one. So there are a variety of different calculations that one can perform on these types of data. They're visually appealing. They look pretty. But now we want to extract information from them quantitatively. Can I use this information to make a decision about a clinical case, for example? So we have to think creatively about different ways in which we can use this information quantitatively. This is one by our group called a fiber orientation distribution, so that we can have a quantitative measure against which we can make comparisons. And you can read this. It basically is a function based on a unit sphere and allows us to characterize all dimensions in a fairly quantitative way. It gives us very sharp fiber resolution within voxels and allows us to take these calculations and do examination of clinical patients, whether it be retinotopic mapping or looking at corpus callosum, or as I'll show you in a minute, looking at the 7th and 8th cranial nerve projections for patients that have been deaf at birth and then are about to undergo cochlear implants. So we wanted to use this clinically. So we've developed the quantitation, we've developed the approach, and now we say, does this have any value in terms of healthcare delivery systems? And so we wanted to be able to look at the calculation of an auditory radiation from the sensory system into the cortex, overlaid on what we know from post-mortem images, where that pathway, how it courses through the brain. And so we have fairly consistent results from in vivo compared to the post-mortem. And we do this across a number of subjects now. This is an active project related to some of the neurosurgical activities that occur in the Department of Otolaryngology. And so these fiber bundles are consistent with the morphology that we have collected post-mortem, as shown here. We developed a whole computational methodology so that this can be totally automated. So the scan comes in, this process here is executed in an automatic way and produces this image. I show you this because this software and almost all the things I'm showing you are freely available and downloadable from websites from our group. So you can take this software and run with it, those of you that are interested in this kind of work. So we're also trying to do the entire auditory pathway. Those of you that are neuroanatomists or so inclined can appreciate it's a complex pathway, and we're doing this throughout the brain now, looking at the distribution of these fibers as they go up and down through the brainstem. This is complicated trajectory, and it produces oftentimes significant errors, so it's very difficult to compute. And clinically, when one is looking at particular trajectory of the 7th and 8th nerve, the facial nerve relative to its partner right there, the vestibular cochlear nerve, it's difficult to appreciate these pathways without having quantitative maps. Validating these data is always important. So we've done this in rodents by tracer injection, as I mentioned earlier. We get corresponding pathways using the same animal that we put in the magnet that we then subsequently take the data from after death. And speaking of after death, this is back to our old friend, the Alzheimer's disease patient. As I mentioned earlier, the hippocampus, part of the brain in the temporal lobe, is uniquely affected by this disease. And this is a post-mortem section of the hippocampus of a patient who died of Alzheimer's disease. We've done connectopathies on this patient, and then the tissue sections that we did these connectopathy measures on were also mapped using gene expression techniques. So we can begin to put together these different observations, from genetic observations to morphological observations. And where we're heading with this is really just trying to do this in population-based approaches, looking at the patterns and distributions across individuals, so we have normal distributions against which we can compute differences by different groups. But collecting these data is enormously expensive. So you probably don't have an MRI scanner here at this institute, but there are probably many of them here in Moscow. If you go for a scan in the United States, at least, a clinical scan, it'll cost somewhere around $1,000 to $2,000 or even higher. It's pretty expensive. If I want to collect scans of thousands of people, it would cost an awful lot of money and take a long time. So we've developed a couple of approaches to aggregate data that's being collected at different sites and put it into common databases that we then distribute to scientists that are interested in looking at it. And I think this is, again, the wave of the future in terms of aggregating big data that's been collected from different sites around the world and then giving it out to scientists that want to analyze it using their own approaches, their own mathematics, their own algorithms. And so one of the strategies for doing that is something that Paul Thompson now leads, called Enigma. I'm just going to show you 2 slides on this, because it's a social experiment. The experiment is, will people share their data in a way that allows real results to be found? And they do. They don't share the original image data in this experiment. They share the results of it. So the images aren't aggregated at our center. Only the measurements. And these measurements that can then be related to the genetic profile across tens of thousands of people. And that gives you the statistical power necessary to make associations such as this, where we know that certain SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms in the genome, have an association with measurements in brain. It doesn't tell you why. It doesn't tell you how. It's just a correlation. And given some of the slides that Dr. Zelman showed in terms of the fact that much of the information in the genome is not understood, this is, again, a crude approach, but it's really all we have today. And I think the strategy of aggregating data to make discoveries is an important one and will be continued. This is another approach. This is an approach where we're trying to not make a hypothesis. We say, let's just mine the data and see what associations we can find using techniques that we couldn't do otherwise. So this is a big data program. The United States led a number of awards to this. And in the Enigma project, it's called GWAS, Genome-Wide Association Study. And it basically says, I find a phenotype. I find that somebody has a part of the brain that's different than others. And I find that in my survey of 100,000 people, 10,000 people have a unique feature in their brain. And then I search the genome and I try to find a genetic relationship with that phenotype. Genotype, phenotype association. GWAS. What if we did it upside down? Because we know that a number of gene mutations, misspellings in our genome, increase the risk factor for certain diseases. We know this in Alzheimer's disease. We know it in Huntington's disease. We know it in Parkinson's disease. There are a number of diseases where we know the genetic risk factor goes up if you have a certain mutation. And we all have mutations. Most of them don't mean anything, but some of them do. What if we said, now we know that your risk for Alzheimer's disease is significantly higher if you have two copies of ApoE4, a particular mutation. If you have both, if you're a 4/4, both parents gave it to you, your risk for Alzheimer's disease goes up significantly. What if I took all of those people and I said, what is different about the brains of those people that have that mutation? So it's the exact opposite of GWAS. We called it PheWAS. And if we have enough data, we can begin to do this kind of study. Now, I'm not going to show you Alzheimer's disease. I'm going to show you development. So we can pick a particular SNP called BDNF, and we can look at different populations of kids, developing kids. One population was called PING, the other was called PNC, and somebody else just collected these data. And we asked the machine, totally computationally, with a couple thousand or so people in it, what's different about those people that have this SNP versus those that don't? And so you can begin to understand the relationship between the genotype and phenotype by doing these studies. And we replicate it in 2 different populations, so you have statistical confidence that it is real. I only have a few more slides here, but I want to show you some real-world examples of big data and imaging. So in the United States and in many countries, probably in Russia as well, treating atherosclerotic disease, high serum cholesterol in your blood, is done by the prescription of statins, a type of drug that will lower serum cholesterol and reduce the incidence of cardiac events in people. Most cardiologists in the United States will tell you, they call it vitamin S, which means everybody should take it. Everybody should take a statin because it's basically harmless. All it does is lower your cholesterol, and the benefits far outweigh the almost non-existence of negative effects. And it's a good drug to take. If you look at the regulatory tests that were done prior to the drug being approved, which I have done, they did not look at the brain. They did not look at the brain. Which is sort of interesting. So we said, why don't we look at the brains of those people that take statins? There are 2 types of statins. There's lipophilic statins and hydrophilic statins. In the United States, at least, most people take lipophilic statins. They cross the blood-brain barrier. They get into the brain. Hydrophilic statins do not. So we wanted to look at those people that remember the ApoE44s. We wanted to look at those people that take statins and see if there's any effect, because cholesterol might be related someday. So that was the study. We need a lot of data to do this. We didn't have the data, so we just aggregated data that existed using these big data strategies that I just showed you. And we wanted to see if we could understand the relationship between lipophilic statin use and gender. Is there a difference between men and women on the brain, cognition, and Alzheimer's disease? So that was the purpose of the study. Totally retrospective. We did not collect this data. We wanted to look at big data issues with drugs, genetics, disease outcome. Okay. This is what we found. First, we wanted to look at the hippocampus using imaging. So we had our imaging data, and we wanted to see, is there a difference? Yes. If women take statins, their hippocampus are smaller. Both sides, right and left, compared to men. So women take a bigger hit on the volume of the hippocampus than men do if they take the statins. Okay? Women take a hit if they take statins in logical memory, delayed memory and immediate memory, compared to men. Women get a smaller hippocampus. They take a cognitive hit if they take statins. They get a morphological hit if they take statins. What about Alzheimer's disease? Women that take statins have a hazard ratio, basically an increased risk, for getting Alzheimer's disease 69% higher than men. If you're a clinician and you're treating women for risk of Alzheimer's disease because they have a genetic profile that increases their risk, and I'm not a clinician, but were I a clinician, would be very careful about prescribing statins to this population. So this is now under review at a big journal because I think it's a monumental discovery. It may alter the clinical care of high serum cholesterol in women with genetic risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. So there it is in bold. They have a 69% increased risk for conversion from mild cognitive impairment to Alzheimer's disease when compared to women non-users or compared to men. So there's something about women that's different than men if they take these statins. So there's another way of doing big data projects. This is a big data project where all of the data are made available, but it's not centralized. We built a federated computational system where we linked centers that collect data about Alzheimer's disease around the world, and it allows us to do the studies that I just illustrated to you in a way that you wouldn't have the statistical power otherwise. So this project, and again, you can look on this. If you just Google GAIN, G-A-A-I-N, you can find it. This is an outdated slide. There's now closer to 500,000 patients in here. And you can computationally analyze these data online, and the data actually live in each of the centers. All you're using the GAIN portal to is to talk to them in a transparent way. These are the places. Perhaps we should add more in Russia. I think there's plenty of activities here in Russia that would support this. From this type of interface, you can do surveys across literally thousands of variables and instantaneously get results using this type of approach. This particular this particular screen is showing you a cohort discovery, where one is trying to find a patient population that meets certain criteria. You may want to have a certain cognitive test, certain type of MRI, certain genetic profile, or what have you. One of the questions we wanted to ask was, are there differences between men and women in Alzheimer's disease? Given the study that I just showed you, what are the differences between men and women? And the reason we wanted to ask that is since 1997, a paper by a fellow named Ferrer said that women have about a 50% increase in Alzheimer's disease compared to men. Well, the question was always, well, that's because women live longer. Women generally live a few years longer than men. So maybe it's just that. So we wanted to go back, and with the sufficient power that we have using this type of approach, let's test it. Let's see if he's right. Because if you read the literature, you'll find everybody believes that women have a 50% higher increase of Alzheimer's disease. So using this approach that I just showed you a slide of, we did this study. We collected 58,000 subjects that meet the criteria, and we tested, are men and women the same or different? And in fact, they're the same. So the universal belief in the Alzheimer's disease literature is wrong. And it's because they didn't have statistical power in order to understand that, in fact, men and women have about equivalent lifetime risks for Alzheimer's disease. And this is a study. Each of these circles here just shows you the origins of the data. The size of the circle reflects the number of subjects that they contribute to this project. And the line that goes this way just shows you that equivalent. And I think these kinds of studies really drive home the power of big data aggregation that allows you to answer vexing questions that cannot be answered with insufficient data. And so contrary to belief, if you have these particular gene risk factors, then you have an equivalent risk between men and women, except for a small period of time between 65 and 75 years of age, and women have a slightly increased risk. So those are the things that I wanted to say during my 30 minutes. I just want to close with a brief little movie. This is not real data, but maybe it will come. It's the basis of fMRI, which is looking at hemodynamic changes. We cannot see this at this level of resolution, but these are the signals from which the measurements are derived. And I think it's important to recognize the limits of the technologies that we have today. They offer us a great deal of hope, but if you remember the first couple of slides I showed you, the ability to make observations literally from the cellular level all the way up to the whole brain level is really going to be the only key to understanding the complexity of the human brain. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Question.
Can you share your view on why AD is so hard to understand? I mean, so hard to research and maybe some secrets and some obstacles.
Oh, I don't have any secrets. That's not the right one. I don't have any secrets, sadly. Why is Alzheimer's disease so difficult to understand? In part, the reason is by the time the patient shows up at the clinic, the disease has progressed for 2 or 3 decades. 2 or 3 decades prior to them showing up with cognitive impairment and memory complaints. So the pathology has had a long time to emerge. We really spent the last 10 years understanding some of the pathophysiology, having to do with beta amyloid accumulation, having to do with tau accumulation, which I didn't talk about, having to look at the cellular profiles of these disease processes. We've only recently discovered many of the SNPs, the mutations that are that are associated with these changes. ApoE was discovered some years ago. There's now a couple of dozen of other risk factors. Population is heterogeneous. Our ability to understand the disease in vivo has been limited by our ability to develop biomarkers. Today, there is no good biomarker of the disease. No good biomarker. So how are you going to develop a full understanding of the progression of the disease unless we can make adequate measurements? By the time I see MRI changes, the tissue's already dead. That's not a good biomarker. So it's just a very difficult, complex disease process. And I would say to you, Alzheimer's disease is not that unique in either neurological disease or psychiatric disorders. We have not made very much progress in brain disease, period. And I think it's due to the fact that it's a closed system. It's difficult for us to make measurements.
Okay, thank you very much, Arthur. I think we have to proceed with the schedule and then time for the questions. Thank you very much.
Филипп, вы будете выступать, да?
Oh.
Давай.
Okay, so the next speaker, one before the last one, is Philipp Khaitovitch from Skoltech. He's a professor there, and he will talk on the complementary topic of molecular mapping of the human brain. Thank you.
А на каком языке это говорится?
На каком хочешь?
So, okay, I don't know, should I speak... let me speak English, right?
Yeah.
So most people can understand it. And I cannot speak well in any languages, so it wouldn't matter. So I'll give a brief, about 10-minute presentation about molecular mapping of the human brain. So you've just seen absolutely wonderful slides from Professor Toga, and there are molecules somewhere at the very corner of the slide, and this is where we are. We're looking at the molecules, and we're looking not only at the genome, but also at the epigenome, transcriptome, proteome, metabolome, and lipidome. And in our work today, we're mostly focused on these levels, so there's hope for biomarker discovery, but also for something what people don't normally look at. Actually, our brain made not only of proteins, but it's mostly made of lipids, made of fats. And there are ways now to measure. So as you've seen in previous talks, there are some 7 Tesla-like machines. We have our own machine. It's high-precision mass spectrometers, which allow us to look at the lipid concentrations in the brain and compare samples from different ages and from different diseases. And I will give you a short overview of a study we just did. It's not yet published. We look at the prefrontal cortex region in the brain in about 400 control individuals, some disease samples. So we were interested to see. It doesn't. It works now. Okay. So before it didn't seem like work. Okay. So we looked at about 400 individuals from embryonic stages to 99 years old, and look how the lipid concentration changed in the brain. And if you're interested, there are 4 main stages. There's the infant stage. So 4 main stages where we clearly can distinguish the levels of different brain composition in terms of lipid. And this is infant stage, This is till about 100 days after birth, so it's very interesting to what Professor Zelman was saying. So actually, from early embryonic stages to about 100 days after birth, you have one type of brain lipid composition. Then from 100 days to about 6 years of age, it's a different brain lipid composition. Then from 6 years to about 30 years, it's a third one. So if you're young people, you're still in this period. And then from 30 to 99, it's a fourth stage. And you can, for each of the stages, you can find lipids which have higher concentration or lower concentration in this stage, and they're involved in different pathways. They have different functional properties, but this is actually something what still needs to be analyzed in more details. What is more perhaps interesting for some of the related perhaps to the topics which we discussed today, does lipidome changes in diseases? And nobody really looked before at the brain directly. Do you have some changes in the brain composition? We took Down syndrome as a positive control because it's systemic disease and there will be big changes. But we also looked at autism and schizophrenia. And we had no idea whether there will be any changes. We actually didn't expect anything. So we didn't take too many samples, so it's about 20, 30 samples for each disease, because it's not easy to come up with brains for disease subjects. But actually what we saw was quite surprising. So of course in Down syndrome we see huge changes. So about 500 lipids, even with a few samples we had, show very big, significant concentration changes. But what was surprising in schizophrenia, with correction to the sample size, we saw almost as many changes in lipid concentration in the brain as in Down syndrome. Although schizophrenia doesn't strike you as a disorder which would necessarily change lipid composition of the brain. And in autism, there was much less effect. Even though on the gene expression level, for instance, autism changed much more. So schizophrenia clearly has very systemic changes in the brain in terms of lipid composition. And this is not only in our study, but if we look at the genome-wide association studies, something that you just heard before, identifying genetic markers of schizophrenia. So actually for schizophrenia, we see for many of the patterns of lipid changes, we see a strong overlap of genes where with genetic markers were identified, and genes which are linked to lipidome processes, which we see changed in schizophrenia. But this is only true for schizophrenia, so it's a little bit complicated slide. This is bar for autism, this is for schizophrenia, and this is for Down syndrome. So for autism and Down syndrome, probably lipidome changes we detect represent the consequences of disease. But for schizophrenia, it may lay at even at the causative part. And the other part, which of course some of you may be not interested yet, but some are, how does lipid concentration change during aging process? As I said, we have 4 stages, and the last stage from 30 to 100. And we see what lipidome composition complexity actually increases with age. But at the last stage, it remains stable. So it argues against the theory that once we age, our brain starts breaking down like an old car. Many people compare aging to something like, you have a car and things break down, it gets rusty. But then you expect, actually metabolites and lipids really represent the working molecules which represent physiological states of the cells. So if something starts breaking down randomly, you will see a lot of spare parts falling out, and you will see some strange things happening in the metabolic process, some byproducts appearing. But this is not what we see. We don't see increase in variability of the lipidome with age at the old stage, and we don't see increase in complexity. But we see a lot of changes still happening. So if we look at these changes, it's rather complicated, but basically if we say, when do aging-related concentration changes start? Because we have this period from 30 to 100 years, and we can plot lipid concentration changes, and this is just an example of cluster with about 100 lipids, and it behaves like this. So first concentration goes up, and then concentration goes down. So if you start from the very old age and you look at these lipids, you say, oh, look, the concentration of these lipids goes down. And it doesn't look like a big change, but it's also because of scale here, because we put everything on the same scale. So, but actually with trend starts about 50 years of age. And this is, we basically plotted the distribution of its breakpoints when this aging-related changes really start in the brain. And it's really the main peak around 50, 55 years of age. So when something starts happening in the brain lipidome. But what does it mean? We don't truly know. We don't know, is it compensatory changes or is it some kind of other changes, but as I said, there's no breaking down of the brain in terms of how you imagine the old car would break. But one thing we clearly can see, when we're talking about lipids, we're talking, of course, about membranes mostly, and one of the main properties of membrane is membrane fluidity. So we know receptors, proteins, they float in membrane like boats floating on the sea, and if membrane is not fluid enough, so it would be like in the Arctic Circle when the boats get frozen, trapped in ice. We don't want this to happen, but we also don't want too much fluidity. So we can look at the measure of fluidities, which are known and reconstructed, and we can see a very clear picture. So the blue here represent more order, less fluidity, and the red represents less order and more fluidity, so more liquid membranes. And we can see with age, including the very last stage between 65 and 100, we see increase in membrane fluidity. So this is a very, very clear trend. And what is interesting, in schizophrenia, we see also more red compared to control. So in schizophrenia, brains become more fluid compared to the healthy subjects. But in the Down syndrome and partially in autism not so much change, as I already told you, is they become more solid, so they become somehow more similar to the infant stage in terms of their brain fluidity state. And the very last slide, so with the work we've done, although it's not published, but now we're trying to organize our own little network because we are one of the few places in the world doing this kind of lipidomic research. So people in Germany and people in China and also people here in Moscow collecting blood samples and brain samples from disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, controls, also autism, but autism may be not really so relevant to this. They already collected cognitive data, they have MRI, CT scans, they have genotypes, but they couldn't really find the cause of disease biomarkers based on that. So they give us now their samples, the brain samples and the plasma samples to measure, and we're getting like thousands of samples of plasma and hundreds of samples of brain. So this is like German-wide study. China is not China-wide, but it's still, just one province. It's already more people than the whole Germany, approximately twice as much. And some people here in Moscow from the hospitals, and this is what we're going to do. And we think it could be promising, especially given our preliminary results, which we didn't expect. But in schizophrenia, at least, we see such drastic changes in lipidome composition. So again, we are very happy to integrate this data with some other data types. And thank you all for attention.
Yes, if you have questions, please do ask, and I'll connect back to the last talk.
Okay, seems like no questions.
You can ask questions to other speakers as well, because it will be like a couple of minutes. Спасибо. Если что-то курит, возьмите все на все выгонят. Не нужна сейчас я немножко когда они организовали. Okay, so my talk is the last talk, and it was supposed to be the closing remark talk, and I decided to dedicate it to showing you the set of projects that is underway in the CDM, Center for Cognition and Decision Making of the Higher School of Economics, so I would like to use this opportunity to show to you that we are doing quite a bit of very interesting research, which is partly goes in line with those great talks that you just heard. I'll get the microphone. But let me first, because I'm a male, I can't concentrate on two things at a time. So let me just. Okay, there we go. Okay. And so let me, I will not do much of introduction, but get the microphone. Is it the one I have to use, right? Yeah. Okay. So again, so the talk is about the Kaleidoskope of brain mapping projects that are taking place at the Center for Cognition and Decision Making at the High School of Economics. Oops. Very nice. What does this mean? I'm sorry. Okay, so the center itself has been established just recently in 2013 and has been established to aim at perfection, and we believe that we are trying to at least do a very good job. We have not only research, we have also educational program where it's a master's program which titled is Cognitive Science and Technologies, and graduates of this program go into PhD studies into top universities in the world. And continue to work with us, so we maintain the link. Also, we have a curriculum which is not only, as Dr. Toga just mentioned, that you can't study the brain without mathematics, so our curriculum is made together with computer science department, which is traditionally very strong at the High School of Economics, and we work together with Sergei Kuznetsov, and our curriculum has some very basic mathematical classes and more advanced computational neuroscience, and other more sophisticated courses that students can take. The center itself is driven by the PIs, and Anna Shestakova is the director of the center, and those guys are the PIs of different groups. We have Neuroeconomics group with PI of Vasily Klucherov, Cognitive Control and Communication group with two co-PIs, Yuri Shtirov and Andrei Machikov. Neurodynamics group has been led by Vadim Nikulin, and Theoretical Neuroscience group is led by Boris Gutkin. The neuroimaging group has been led by me in some collaboration with Mikhail Lebedev as far as brain-computer interfaces are concerned. And the last group is memory and motor control group, last because it just joined us recently, has been led by Matteo Fiora. They do some transcranial TDCS and TACS kind of stimulation studies. So now, I know that you're kind of tired, so now there's a task for you. So you remember the names, right? Okay, so now I will go through every group, okay, and you have these pictures you will have on the right corner here, but without names. So try to, remember and put the names, okay? So you don't. All right, so we use in our center, the main idea is that we use quite a big range of different techniques for measuring the brain function and to alter the brain function using transcranial TDC, transcranial magnetic stimulation, and transcranial direct current and alternating current stimulation. We use EEG, we use MEG in collaboration with Moscow Imaging Center, we use fMRI and MRI, and now we, in collaboration with Polyanova Institute, we are using ECOG for invasive brain-computer interfaces project. So this is the plot that shows you the relative the relation between different methods that we use in terms of spatial and temporal resolution, which resonates well with what Dr. Toga mentioned in his talk. The first group is neuroeconomic group. So now you have to put the names in writing, okay? Who are these people? So the neuroeconomic group is involved in studying very complicated processes of decision making, and for example, the process of hard decisions when you need to choose between two supercars and what's actually happening in your brain. So also we do studies related to social conflicts. And see what changes actually accompany or correlate with the conflict state in your brain. It's a conflict with the social conflict, because it's conflict with the opinion of the group of your peers. Okay, so it's not just conflict that this stick is longer than that, but this study was in comparing the attractiveness of faces or trustworthiness of faces. Okay, so Also the neuromechanism of bargaining on a fish market example. And I will not go in details into any of the projects here. Just will go show you the bucket of projects so you can at least get an impression of what's going on. Then another group is Cognitive Control, Communication and Perception Group, or SSSCCCP or SSSR, who likes it more. So that study related to embodied language hypothesis, that is active study where when you modulate the activity of the motor cortex and you get alteration in reaction time when you are trying to recognize motor-related words. The study related to cross-linguistic interaction in bilingual brain, where you perceive the meaning of the word when you are bilingual. You perceive it not so much based on what's written or what you hear, but most of how phonemically close this word, the two words are. Okay. Then also the social context study. So we modify the content of our speech. The informativeness of our speech based on the social context. So depending on a patio or in a formal meeting we are. Then neurodynamics group, again, don't forget the task, okay? So this is more methods-oriented group. They develop methods for doing TMS and EEG joint studies. One study, which is a very nice study, and they're developing the software which allows to bring the TMS results from several people into one general brain and do inferences on a macro level to increase the power of the inferences. And then another study, I did just a few, they have several of them, but I just a couple of them here. The study how the TMS stimulation can alter the large-scale dynamics of the human cortex based on the EEG functional dynamics. Okay, the computational neuroscience group, the incomprehensible set of formula, but very interesting projects which actually build models that explain the behavior on different levels, starting from cell level to macro level, like say segmenting the speech into different syllabi and the role of slow oscillations, cortical oscillations in this process, and of course homeostatic theory of reinforcement learning, an interesting work that resonates well with earlier works of Russian scientists back in the beginning of the previous century. Okay, so. And then memory and motor control group, that's actually very interesting because it also resonates very well with the topic of today's lectures. Shows that polymorphism of the BDNF polymorphism, for those people who do not have the polymorphism, they have memory function, which is normal memory function, and it is easy to disrupt it with TMS, while at the same time those people who suffer from BDNF polymorphisms, the memory function is weaker and it's not altered by the TMS stimulation. And the last group, which I'll go a little bit in more details because just happen to know a little bit more about it as I do lead the group, we primarily work on the methods for analysis of the EEG and MEG and now ECOG, electrocorticographic data. We develop techniques for solving the inverse problem, and like recently we developed a method in collaboration with Moscow Imaging Center with Vladimir as a scientist in the center. We developed a method for computing the group inverse. Like traditionally, you just take MEG data, you compute the inverse operator, you get a subject picture in the cortex, right, and then you merge the cortices using some morphing onto the canonical brain. So we decided that, well, if we made the smart algorithms that would allow for the distinct activity in the subjects, but also look for the similarities between the subjects, we can increase the rank of the forward model, and therefore we can increase the resolution of our solution. And so here are the results for I just showed here on the simulated data because they're just much clearer. That we take the data, then we develop the inverse, which is simultaneously developed inverse, and then we get the picture for each of the individual, where we recover the joint activity very nicely. Plus, we allow for each subject to have its own activity without affecting the common part of the solution. Then we're also looking into details at how we map the spikes in epilepsy and also very fine scale cortical dynamics of the, let's say in this case, epileptic spikes in the range of 20 milliseconds. And if you look at what happens, you can see that the source kind of shifts itself and goes into another side of the gyrus. here, and so we developed a method that, based on the wave propagation prior, shows you the solution and shows you the propagation of the activity within this very small 20 millisecond time scale or region. And I believe that going further with this work, we can characterize the interictal spikes based on the direct presence of the directivity of propagation, on the speed of propagation, and this potentially may serve as a marker or something which can be used to classify different sorts of epilepsy. And then this is actually a very remarkable project, because the guy who's done it, I mean the scientific part of it, not methodological part, is the guy who is doing the simultaneous translation here. He's Roman Koshkin. He studied the effect of the working memory and attention and tried to connect the two, and we developed the method which allows you to process the data and find the projections of your data, which allow you to see the differences in single trials, of these responses, and test the hypothesis that the working memory load actually is modulated by attention. Okay, and modulates the attention as well. So also we do, of course, connectivity studies. The challenge is to do the zero phase like connectivity, and so we developed a method which allows you to look at the zero phase like connectivity without the influence of the volume conduction or field spreading effects, and we seem to be getting. It's a hard job, and that was actually one of the questions that I wanted to ask, and I can't tempt you not to ask it. So I will ask why we are not getting the reproducibility and functional connectivity when we do the EEG or MEG kind of studies. Okay, so, and I want your answer, please. Then the radical way to improve the resolution of the imaging is to, of course, embark into the develop another device, this atomic MEG device that would afford having sensors closer to the head, meaning that we would have a high signal-to-noise ratio and we would have better resolution, and probably we can achieve millisecond versus millimeter spatial scale resolution, and we are trying to. We are now applying for funding in an active stage of searching for funds, together with Lauri Parkkonen, Ristel Maniemi from Aalto University, and Anton Vershovsky is a scientist from IOFA Institute in St. Petersburg. And another very exciting part of work that is, of course, BCIs. We just recently started working in this field, maybe 2.5 years ago. And in collaboration with Palenova Institute, we have non-invasive BCI, which is motor imagery BCI, which works quite nicely. And we also applied advanced machine learning techniques based on convolutive networks. And Andrei is right here, who was the winner of Yandex-based hackathon. But another interesting direction, as Charles mentioned in his talk, dedicated to analysis of the ECOG data and attempts to recover the acceleration signal of the finger where you have accelerometer and the finger of the patient was moving. Again, we are not doing anything extra, as Charles said. We just use what has already been done to the patient with the goal to monitor the to find the epileptogenic regions and to localize the eloquent cortex. So that shows you that we can achieve this relatively simple algorithm. We can achieve up to 70% of accuracy in decoding the dynamic trajectory of the finger, and also it can give you valuable information about which sites, which electrodes are important for this decoding. Okay, and so that may be also used clinically for locating the eloquent cortex, actually. So, and also when Charles mentioned about the non-invasive neuromodulation, I think neurofeedback, although has been in the shade for a long time now, is getting out of the shade, having received quite a bit of publications in top journals. We are also looking at the neurofeedback, and we developed very nice software, I think very nice and very, very versatile software, which we are very happy to share if you're interested, of course, with anyone. And we found that when we do the P4, for instance, alpha neurofeedback, where we show to the person the activity, the power of alpha in the P4 electrode, what actually changes, it's not the amplitude of alpha bursts, it's not the duration of alpha bursts, but the number of alpha bursts per minute, per second, or whatever, however we want. So it means that what we learn, actually, we learn to enter the alpha state. Okay, so, and we do not alter the alpha state characteristics itself. This is now under review in Cerebrum, so I hope in the final round. So, okay, and of course, nothing would be possible without those PIs that you saw on the first slide, and without these nice and smart kids, which are students and PhD students and master students at our department, and only a few of them are shown here, primarily chosen based on the size of the photo, you know, so not to overload the slide. Okay, and Roman Koshkin, who is doing the translation, is right here. Okay. So I thank you all very much, and just want to give you the take-home message of my talk, that the Center for Cognition and Decision Making conducts a broad range of comprehensive research projects, including real-time paradigms, or BCI, neurofeedback, and etc. These experiments are done with lots of different equipment. We have access to a broad range of equipment here. We have the experiments of ours are supported by the computation core, by the models that our computational neuroscience group developing, and by the methods to process the data which my group is developing. And we are collaborating with a lot of different institutions in Russia and abroad. And this symposium is actually, this mini conference is actually aimed with me and Dr. Zelman's idea, Dr. Zelman's primary idea, to creating the joint High School of Economics, University of Southern California, and Skoltech collaboration, some sort of a mirror lab, so that the students that we teach, I mean, they go there, then they come back, and then go back again. So, I mean, but we still maintain the collaboration, you know, and develop our own science here. Thank you very much. So we have about 10 minutes, or 20 minutes, 15 minutes. I was quite useful. Okay, we have 15 minutes for the questions. No? Okay, we have 5 minutes for the questions. So please answer me my question. Because you will dash now. And then
Yeah. So the question was, if you make a measurement using fMRI, and you make a measurement using electrophysiologic approaches, why don't you find the same result?
not only that.
Not only that.
Not only that. fMRI is fine, but you get very nice reproducibility from person to person. With any, well, sample, but well, given that with MEG you get none, you get quite a bit with fMRI. Okay, so the question is, why do you think with MEG we have very nice, we know all this, okay, we know very nice models, we do it on a high level, okay, so it's not just, you know, we've been doing it for quite a long time. We don't, and not only us, we don't get very nice reproducibility, we get very poor reproducibility as soon as we get rid of volume conduction effects. So when we talk about actual just connectivity, pure connectivity. So what would be your answer?
Well, one, it could be biology is variable, that the circuits that are subserving behavior may change fairly rapidly electrically, and that is producing differences that you can see people have different methods for doing things. With fMRI, because it's a secondary phenomenon, it's hemodynamic, that the underlying change that's electrophysiologic is washed out. We don't see it. Mm-hmm. That you're using a cruder measure with fMRI. It's just changes in blood flow. That's all you're looking for. With MEG and EEG, you're closer to the signal, and so intersubject variation or even within subject variation over time may produce variations in the output that you can actually measure. So, I mean, there are different techniques.
So, do you think it's hopeless and not interesting to do the connectivity analysis, EEG or MEG? Because if you can't reproduce it, I mean, what's use of it?
Well, when you say you can't reproduce it, there are some things you can reproduce that are similar. Other things are quite noisy. I think what we need to do is to see where that noise is relative to the common denominator. There might be signal within there that is getting washed out by the noise that would be very consistent. I don't know.
I see, okay. So, Dimas, there is a hope. So, that's my PhD student who are doing this project.
And I don't do EEG, so.
You don't do, no MEG. EEG is like, if you especially talk about the inverse model, it's kind of hopeless, but MEG is not that bad, actually. Like Zelman published recently the study where he showed that if you have a curved surface, you can get up to 2 millimeters resolution spatial, which is, I think, pretty cool. So, any more questions?
Could you use microphones? We couldn't really hear you.
Any more questions? Any more questions? Yes, please. Okay.
Is it possible to conduct research on, for example, two scales simultaneously? So, as far as I understand, when we measure EEG and ECOG, we actually measure the same thing. So is it possible to measure ECOG and EEG simultaneously so that we could, for example, learn some filtering transform or something that would help us to filter or enhance our EEG data?
There's no reason why you can't do it. I think that when you implant the electrodes, right? The physical can you guys hear? Yeah. Okay. The physical the fact that the grid is there, right, will create some interference in terms of your ability to collect the signal, right? So one possibility would be to have the patient perform the same behavioral task, right, with EEG, and then the exact same behavioral task with the ECOG in. As you know, the quality of the signal, right, and the artifacts that are associated with these signals, and just the actual power of the signals you're able to record from the electrical power is much higher, right? So you can't discern, for example, if you look at high gamma activity, right? You don't see it as well on the EEG as you do the ECOG. There's absolutely no reason why you can't have it behave one path. In fact, that might be a good experiment.
Yeah. Any more questions? And you can also do MEG and ECOG based. And there were these studies in 2010, 2009, 2007, I believe, where you can have implanted patients with proper grids, and then you can try to do the MEG. And, of course, you have lots of artifacts, right? But you can do it. And the data exists. Yes. Any more questions?
Well, maybe two charts. Recently, I've seen a paper where about direct reprogramming glial cells into neurons in mice. How do you think? Is there any perspective concerning the human on that?
So the question is, the idea that different cells in the brain, right, different categories of cells. I remember in the early 2000s when this whole idea of stem cells first started to be developed. It seemed like every day somebody was coming up with a new category of what was considered a stem cell, right? And there are all these different categories of neurons. We now know that depending on the environment that these cells find themselves, they can actually progress up and down this spectrum of development. I don't know. The answer to your question is whether or not it's possible for human glia to become neurons. I don't know the answer to that question. I will tell you that there's been many other things that you can demonstrate in lower mammals that you can't demonstrate in large mammals, right? For example, optogenetics, for example, right? Up until now, nobody's been able to show that optogenetics can work in non-human primate species. So the ability to translate those types of research findings into humans is going to be limited in that way. Dr. Zelman mentioned Elon Musk and this neural net, right? This neural lace that is the basis of his new company. I'm not aware that that neural lace demonstrated to work even in a non-human primate. So there's going to be many other examples of where something you observe in a mouse example is not possible to use. It does, though, however, make this optimistic that we should at least look for that. There is hope. Yeah.
Alexei.
Okay, so I'm terribly sorry, and actually the organization is not as great as I actually hoped for. We really have to relocate if we want to continue the discussion to some other room there, because there is another happening in this room. I'm terribly sorry, guys. I really didn't expect this mishap. Yeah. Yep.